I had just arrived home on Friday and was eagerly anticipating the weekend. My wife greeted me differently, not with her usual smile and peck, but appearing fidgety and determined about something. It seemed like something was off. I greeted her and inquired about the kids, expressing that it was Friday and they should be home. She informed me that the kids were with Mom until Monday and expressed an urgency in her voice, saying she needed to talk to me. She mentioned having something to tell me, acknowledging that it might be tough for me to grasp. She assured me it wasn't something negative, but might be challenging to understand initially. She asked me to try to understand if I loved her. I agreed to try to understand, and she thanked me, stating that it was something that had been on her mind for a long time and might sound silly or strange at first. She then revealed her desire to be fornicatory with others, and despite my initial laughter, she conveyed seriousness. I questioned if she was divorcing me, but she reassured me that she loved me and would never leave me. She emphasized that this was something she felt she needed to do. As she explained her desire to explore beyond our marriage, anger replaced my initial shock. I expressed my lack of understanding and disagreement with such a decision. She insisted that she was going to do it whether I liked it or not, clarifying that she had never cheated on me and had no intention of doing so. She assured me that she had promised to take precautions and not deny me anything in our bed. However, I wasn't fully present in the conversation, and she noticed my mind was wandering. She emphasized that this had nothing to do with us and made it clear that it was a personal need she felt compelled to fulfill. Despite her pause, I remained motionless and unresponsive. I just sat there staring, appearing to be all but catatonic. My wife of 17 years had just destroyed me and expected me to actually like it, or at least tolerate it. I didn't, and I wouldn't, not ever. Veronica, my wife, expressed her need for this change, explaining that she was getting to a stage in life where she really needed it. She shared her history of being a maiden when we married, and how she had never known another man. She emphasized her desire to explore and understand lovemaking, clarifying that it was only about the physical aspect, not love, except with me. I continued to stare, unable to say anything. The revelation that my wife wanted to explore other men, not just one but multiple, was deeply unsettling. The most shocking part was that she expected me to be okay with it. Veronica urged me to say something, but I couldn't find the words. Instead, I rose and headed upstairs to the bedroom, the one that had been ours. Now it meant nothing to me. I felt sick and broken spiritually, my body devoid of sensation. I was overwhelmed with fear. In a remarkably short time, perhaps 15 minutes or less, she had managed to destroy our marriage. I sat on the bed contemplating, or rather, attempting to contemplate. I knew I had to leave the house and distance myself from my wife, a wife who was on the brink of betraying me, and she was determined to proceed, regardless of my feelings. I had been an avid marathon runner in college. Running or taking long walks always helped me clear my thoughts. I decided to walk for a long distance. I changed out of my suit and into comfortable jeans, a Henley shirt, and my $200 running shoes. Grabbing my wallet, a cap, and sunglasses, I descended the stairs. Veronica remained seated in the same spot where she had disclosed her intentions to explore closeness encounters with other men. I paused for a moment, gazing at her. Once again, she felt like a stranger to me. Glancing back at her, my hand on the doorknob, I asked who she was. I turned and exited, slamming the door shut behind me. As I briskly moved forward, her words were drowned out as I shut the door forcefully. I was already past the neighbor's house when she called for me to return and talk. She caught up, running alongside me until she ran out of breath. She continued to plead, expressing that we needed to talk, and she loved me. She assured me that she wasn't doing this to hurt me and emphasized that there was still an us. She professed her love and pleaded for me to come back. She eventually gave up. I think she collapsed on the sidewalk, but I didn't glance back to confirm. I couldn't bear to look at her. She couldn't keep up with the pace I was setting. I could still complete a marathon in under 3 hours without breaking a sweat. Soon I was 2 blocks away, and she was nowhere in sight. Turning the corner, I accelerated, going into overdrive as I called it. I was cruising. I could maintain this pace indefinitely, and perhaps I would. We had met in college. She was distributing cups of water to participants in a 10K event. I had won that race. Later, I joked with her that I had won because I was racing to find her before she slipped away. I caught her just in time, before she disappeared into the crowd of spectators. We hit it off instantly. She worked as a secretary to the dean of the business school. Despite not finishing college, she had secured a significant job due to her meticulous attention to detail and adeptness with written communication. I was a graduate student at the time, studying electronics and computer science. We dated for 6 months before becoming fornicatory, and it was incredible. Despite being a maiden, she was exceptionally skilled in matters of closeness, and she thoroughly enjoyed it. At the time, it didn't occur to me, but she was naturally enthusiastic. There were signs. She just never fully embraced it. We married months after my graduation and 14 months after we first met. I was 26, and Ronnie was a year older at 27. Yes, I'll repeat it. She was still a maiden at 27. Callie and John Jr. arrived in the 9th and 10th years of our marriage, respectively, and we thrived. Ronnie continued as the dean's secretary, and I worked as a computer systems engineer for Peters Limited, a company involved in cutting-edge military research and development. My boss and the owner of Peters Limited was Bill Schuler, a 60-ish bachelor with an almost manic work ethic. Bill and I were not just boss and employee, we were close friends. Veronica and I had been married for about 17 years now, which I had believed to be wonderful. However, evidently, Veronica thought differently. Over the past few months, Ronnie had become somewhat distant, occasionally short-tempered with me, and less frequently with the children. This had led to a couple of heated arguments. While being short with me was one thing, I couldn't tolerate it when it came to the children. I considered that she might be going through menopause. I wasn't well versed in female biology, but I was aware of some things. I had intended to look into it more, but I never got around to it. Now, as I walked, I wished I had. Veronica explained to Roberta that she didn't know where Bobby, her brother, was. She mentioned that he had left the house around 5 p.m. on Friday and hadn't been seen since. Expressing her worry and frantic state, Veronica sought guidance from Roberta, expressing concern about Bobby's whereabouts and asking for help. Roberta Mason could have been my wife's twin, and they had more than once been mistaken for sisters. Both had flowing red hair, curvaceous figures, and adorable freckles. Roberta was maybe an inch taller than Ronnie at 5'7", but otherwise, they were near clones of each other. However, Bobby had a different personality. She was tough-minded, slow to speak, and less inclined to do so, still single at age 40. No, she wasn't gay, but she preferred being independent. Roberta Mason inquired about John, expressing surprise that he would behave in such a manner. Veronica shared that they had a disagreement, and John had walked out without talking. Bobby, concerned about the situation, reassured Veronica that Ronnie, presumably her husband, would find John. However, Bobby wanted to know the details of their argument, to which Veronica responded vaguely, stating it was personal and nothing that should have led John to leave. Roberta, a psychologist, commented on the situation, expressing her intention to find out more when they located John. She noted that Veronica had waited too long to call, hinting at sarcasm. Despite their good relationship, Roberta always felt that Veronica was a bit ditzy. Roberta then asked for details about John's departure, including the direction he headed, his clothing, and if he had taken a coat or his car. Veronica provided information about John going east toward Baxter, wearing a dark green t-shirt, jeans, and a Cubs baseball cap. She mentioned that he hadn't taken a coat or his car, expressing concern about the freezing weather. Roberta acknowledged the urgency of the situation and instructed Veronica to stay home and man the phone in case John called. She assured Veronica that she had her cell phone and would keep her informed as she set out to search for John. The road was icy, so Roberta Mason drove under the speed limit. 10 miles out of town, her cell rang, prompting her to pull over to answer it. She learned that John was in Baxter, and expressing concern, decided to head there immediately before hanging up. In Baxter, a town of 150 with few residents, John found himself indifferent to the place, enjoying a hot meal and warmth in his cell. The steel door at the end of the hall clanged open, and although John couldn't see who was coming, the footsteps signaled someone approaching. As the only prisoner, it had to be him. Upon arrival, Roberta questioned John, asking if he was proud of himself. He inquired if Veronica had called her, and Roberta confirmed revealing that she had already been on the road looking for him. She expressed concern about his actions, pointing out that he had little ones and a worried wife at home. John sarcastically remarked that the kids might be worried, but Veronica wouldn't be. Roberta acknowledged that Veronica hadn't provided much detail, only mentioning a tiff and John leaving. John explained the disagreement, revealing Veronica's intention to be fornicatory with other men, whether he liked it or not. Roberta's face remained composed as John elaborated on Veronica's plans. The guard sympathetically opened John's cell door, and they walked toward the front receiving area. John was informed that he had been bailed out, but needed to return by Friday to plead. The jailer advised him to pay the fine and settle the damages for the bar fight, which involved broken chairs, a damaged table, and a broken mirror. John agreed, acknowledging the logic of the advice. During the 2-hour-plus drive back, Roberta questioned John about the bar fight. After he shared his story, she remained silent for some time and then began her analysis. As John's sister, she considered herself his patient and insisted on helping him, noting that women go through changes men can't understand, attributing it to hormonal factors that can induce fear and insecurity. I conveyed to Bobby that I wasn't naive, emphasizing that other women don't engage with other men to improve their situations. I spoke with conviction, asserting my position. Bobby countered, sharing a statistic that 60% of men and 40% of women engage in extramarital affairs, contributing to the high divorce rate. She suggested that Veronica might be going through such a phase and needed my support. As I started to respond, she raised her hands to stop me. She clarified that she wasn't advocating for letting Veronica be fornicatory with other men. Instead, she urged me to talk to her, hold her hand, and guide her through this challenging period. Bobby emphasized that Veronica needed my strength and support. I expressed my willingness to do anything to help Veronica, with the condition that if she allowed another man to be fornicatory with her, our relationship would be over without any exceptions. I made it clear that if she disrespected me in that way, I would do my best to bring consequences to both her and her lover or lovers. Bobby fell silent again, and I felt uneasy, perceiving her thoughtfulness as judgment. The conversation then shifted to lighter topics. Observing my accomplishment of walking 100 miles in 2 days, Bobby acknowledged it. I downplayed it, saying it was something I could do and needed the time for introspection, dismissing it as nothing significant. It was a hell of a feat, especially given the temperatures and road conditions at this time of year. "What were you thinking?" she said. She meant, how could I not have thought about the conditions of the weather and the roads? But I extrapolated her words to mean my thoughts about Veronica, myself, and our marriage. Christmas was 3 weeks away, shaping up to be quite the holiday. What awaited me under the yet-to-be-put-up tree? Perhaps a used contraceptive, bearing someone else's seed. I felt furious, and couldn't bring myself to go home just yet. I instructed Bobby to drop me at Peter's, explaining that it was Sunday and I needed to be alone for a while. I suggested that she could go there tomorrow and inform Veronica about my need for solitude. Bobby expressed her understanding and mentioned that she would talk to Veronica, who was quite worried about me. She speculated that Veronica might reconsider her plans, if any, now that she was aware of my feelings. I assured Bobby that I wouldn't do anything rash, and just needed more time to think. After dropping me off, I watched Roberta drive away before entering my office. Although she believed Veronica might postpone her plans, I couldn't shake the concern that she might have already acted on them. Reflecting on the loss of trust in my wife, I considered it a significant and troubling situation. "He's afraid he's lost you," Roberta commented upon entering, shrugging off her coat without a greeting. Veronica dismissed the notion, stating that she had told me he would never lose her. Roberta challenged her, emphasizing that when she mentioned making love to other men, any man would be thinking what I was thinking. Veronica, looking troubled, asked if I had told Roberta. Roberta confirmed, stating that she was my sister and that secrets like that couldn't be kept for long. Veronica defended her desire to explore, framing it as something she had always wanted to know about and considered okay to do. Roberta issued a warning, stating that if Veronica went through with it, she would lose me, our children, and most of the friends and relatives who loved her. She emphasized the gravity of the situation, questioning if Veronica realized the consequences. Veronica couldn't meet Roberta's eyes as she explained her need, hoping that Roberta would understand. She revealed that it had consumed her for a long time, expressing uncertainty about being able to help herself. Veronica emphasized that John had always understood her and needed him to do so again. She acknowledged that she couldn't live without him, but was unsure if she could refrain from acting on her desires with someone else. Expressing the real danger of outright cheating, Veronica admitted that the overpowering feeling and need inside her were challenging to resist. Roberta, in response, shared her perspective, stating that she could relate to such overpowering feelings. She explained that despite loving men and not being gay, she chose not to marry because she knew she couldn't remain faithful to one man. She cautioned Veronica about the potential consequences of her proposal, emphasizing the risk of losing everything if she didn't clean up her act soon. Veronica conceded that Roberta might be right, and she started to sob. Roberta comforted her, assuring her that everything would be all right. She offered to stay with Veronica for the night and promised to be there the next day when John returned, ready to referee the situation. Roberta expressed gratitude for Veronica's acknowledgement and advised her to give up the idea of being with other men. She emphasized the importance of convincing her husband that he had nothing to fear, recognizing it as a challenging task. Veronica nodded, allowing herself a small smile, though Roberta missed the slight narrowing of her eyes in response to the last words. Realizing that obtaining her husband's approval was unrealistic, Veronica faced a decision: either abandon her plans entirely or persuade her husband otherwise. These were two distinct choices, but her priority was winning him back, as her love for him remained undeniably true. For the first time since his abrupt departure, Veronica felt a sense of clarity. Answers were within reach. She would soon find out. The following morning, I woke up on the office couch feeling a bit stiff. The lengthy walk and less than ideal sleeping conditions had taken a toll. While accustomed to marathon distances for time, military-style endurance walks were a rarity for me, especially in the last decade. Yet, I was somewhat proud that I hadn't lost my touch. Not yet. I parked in front of the house a little after 10 a.m., knowing Callie and John Jr. would be at school. Veronica opened the door, embracing me tightly. Her relief at my return was palpable. My wife expressed relief, assuring me that she was no longer worried and asking me to forget everything she had said earlier. She admitted to being an idiot and mentioned having a conversation with Bobby, who helped her understand. I remained cautious, my suspicion lingering, as she seemed to have abandoned something she adamantly refused to discuss just a few days prior. I acknowledged her statement with a guarded response, hoping she meant it. Entering the kitchen, I noticed Bobby sitting at the table, sipping her tea. I greeted her and questioned if she was there to support my wife's story. Bobby confirmed that they had talked extensively and expressed hope that we could get through the situation, describing it as a dumb female head trip. Despite the reassurances, something felt off, and I found myself in quite a predicament, lacking trust in my wife. I nodded, hesitant to take anything for granted despite Bobby's insight. She hadn't witnessed or heard Veronica like I had during the Friday confrontation. Over the next few days, Veronica worked hard to reassure me. I was almost starting to buy into Bobby's explanation of a dumb female head trip. Then came Thursday, a peculiar phone call with background noises. I didn't mention it to Veronica, but figured out the words: call, cell, call, my cell. Upstairs, I found her cell on the dresser, checked the call history, noted 6 unknown numbers, and felt lucky. With my military background, I knew uncovering the identities behind those numbers would be easy. Illegal, yes, but my boss had used his clearance for a similar situation. It had been a year. Now it was my turn. This wasn't a no-fault state. If I caught her with evidence, she was mine. Feeling confident that night, the lovemaking was more than good. She had certainly turned things around in the past 6 days. I hoped I wouldn't have to give it up anytime soon. Arriving early in the lab, I aimed to catch Tim before he headed into the field. Tim, our systems installer and field techie, shared a camaraderie with me, fueled by numerous brews as we cheered for our alma mater, Ohio State. I called out to Tim as he passed by, asking if he had a minute. He halted on his way out and agreed to come into my office when I mentioned having a problem and needing his help. In my office, Tim settled into a chair, and I took a seat beside him. I brought up the incident from last year when Mr. Peters had him do some snooping. Tim became suddenly attentive, expressing concern about my involvement in a similar matter. I explained that I had reasons to be concerned and asked if he could assist me. Tim agreed to help, but warned of the risks, emphasizing that I should be certain. I nodded and assured him that if I had anything, I would contact him, requesting that he not discuss it, even with me. He agreed, suggesting that I do some spot checking over the next month and then get back to him. I handed him some phone numbers pulled from my wife's cell, admitting that I didn't know them and that it might be nothing, but it could also be significant. Tim acknowledged that it was a good place to start and noted that it wasn't illegal if my name was on the account, which I confirmed. Reflecting on my wife's actions, I recognized that she had underestimated my tech savviness and connections in the field. If she intended to cheat, her chances of escaping were slim unless she could completely allay my suspicions. It seemed like a precarious strategy, but perhaps her only option. Life settled at home with content kids, a happy Veronica, and me feigning happiness. A week later, Tim asked for a meeting at our usual spot and disclosed that he had checked out the numbers, obtained addresses, and caught Veronica at 2 of them on successive days with pictures, film, and audio evidence. I was informed that my wife was definitely cheating on me, to which I responded nonchalantly, requesting more evidence, especially additional film, as I had plans to take her down along with her lovers. Tim expressed a concern, suggesting that Veronica might be running some kind of sting, but I assured him that I wouldn't be using the gathered evidence in court and had another purpose in mind. Tim, enjoying the espionage aspect, agreed to get more evidence. After 3 weeks, armed with extensive information about the individuals involved, I marveled at the depth of Tim's investigation. It was now a matter of choosing the right time and battleground. I needed to speak with Bobby, and together we watched the gathered evidence in her office. My sister expressed disbelief and irritation, acknowledging that Veronica had even fooled her. Reflecting on the situation, I shared my frustration about feeling deceived and getting sloppy seconds at times. Bobby advised against seeking revenge, emphasizing that it would only eat at me in the aftermath, and our kids would eventually make judgments about both of us. Despite mental torment, I acknowledged her wisdom and decided overt revenge against Veronica was off the table. However, I contemplated retaliating against her lovers, believing that if executed properly, it would make her incredibly unpopular in no time. As it turned out, she had 5 lovers, not 6. The additional number I obtained was a wrong dial to her cell. 4 of her liaisons were married, all with underage children. 2 were individuals whose careers I could significantly jeopardize with minimal effort. 1 a state politician, the other a priest. Veronica had ventured into deep trouble. The influence of a woman's closeness drive had undeniably corrupted her. My sister's choice to remain single for so long suddenly made sense. Veronica would have been better off doing the same. My primary concern was for the children of the cheaters, and, of course, my own. Mine would stay with me. There would be no compromise. While Veronica would have open-ended visitation, no boyfriends would be allowed near them. Otherwise, I would grant her the house, but claim everything else, relocating myself and the children to a lovely 3-bedroom condo near their new elementary school. It was time for war. A tech-savvy friend blurred my wife's face in 5 damning videos and crafted copies for the wives and significant others of the 5 individuals. 2 additional copies were sent to a carefully chosen TV station to expose the priest. I contemplated suing the culprits, but that would have left Veronica vulnerable in court, and I needed to safeguard her to some extent for the sake of my children. I was partially heeding Bobby's advice. The thought occurred to me that technology might eventually put an end to extramarital affairs. It was becoming too easy to expose these individuals. On D-Day, I went to work early, staring at my computer, set up and ready. 1 double click, and 4 husbands would likely become ex-husbands, while another would find himself singing hymns in a remote monastery. I double-clicked. Hell would soon break loose. I smiled, feeling like Joshua at the walls of Jericho, anticipating the walls tumbling down. I informed my section boss that I was taking the rest of the day off and went home. I wondered how long it would take for Veronica to receive the news, or if she would at all, just in case. I loaded one of the videos into the player and turned on the TV. 1 button push, and she would witness herself in provocative film clips, signaling the end of many things, including our marriage. I went upstairs for a nap and had an idea. I returned to the phone, grabbed the pad, and wrote a note. Play video. An hour later, I heard her car in the garage door. She was home. Waiting at the top of the stairs, mostly out of sight, I saw her pause in front of the TV, reading the note on the tape. She approached the player and pressed start. I could sense her nervousness. Although I couldn't see the video, no more than a minute into it, she fainted. The video continued playing. I descended and turned off the machine. She regained consciousness about half an hour later. I sat on the couch, waiting for her to come to. She spotted me. She groggily asked if I hated her, to which I replied affirmatively, stating there was no chance for reconciliation. Offering her the house and allowing the kids to live with her, I asserted my ownership of everything else: stocks, bonds, savings. I presented the option of preserving a bit of her self-respect if she didn't fight me, but warned of ruining her if she chose to resist. Expressing remorse, Veronica explained that she felt compelled to take certain actions. Despite her apology, I deemed her actions unforgivable and warned her that the consequences had caught up with her. The Mintu was in the process of being ruined, and I advised her not to answer her cell anytime soon, anticipating she wouldn't be welcome around the kids. I informed her that I had already leased a place, and Bobby would take the children there after school. Although she would have visitation rights, I made it clear that none of her male friends were welcome. She nodded in understanding. To her credit, she hadn't started crying or making excuses. Anticipating the tears would come about 2 minutes after I left, I proceeded to leave. Now, all the married individuals were divorced by their wives and taken to the cleaners. The priest was reassigned, but I never found out where the Pole is now. Selling used cars, maybe. Veronica still works for the dean and sees the children often. It was challenging to help them understand why Mommy no longer lived with us, but somehow we got through it. Veronica occasionally dates. Some office friends may set her up, but that's just speculation. I know for a fact that the idea of promiscuity no longer appeals to her. She'll be with us at Christmas. She's still family, but she acknowledges she made a significant mistake and has the decency not to push it with me. Lovemaking, lovemaking, lovemaking. It can be such a destroyer. Second story. I've been married to my wife for 4 years, having dated for 2 before getting married. Although we are still relatively new to marriage, our relationship seemed robust with no signs of trouble. Our love was genuine, and we built a foundation of trust during our courtship. I'm 30, and she's 26. The incident that exposed my wife's infidelity happened on July 4th during a party organized by her friend. Let me provide some context before discussing the incident itself. About a week before July 4th, my wife mentioned her friend's July 4th celebration, and we usually have a reliable babysitter for our 3-year-old. We usually inform the sitter in advance about our babysitting needs for this specific July 4th event. My wife informed me that she had contacted the babysitter, who mentioned her schedule would be packed and she couldn't make it. I was disappointed because spending time with my wife had become rarer since we had our baby. Despite my reservations about her friend, my wife expressed a strong desire to attend the event and suggested I stay home with our child while she goes to her friend's party. Wanting her to have fun, I agreed, saying, "I'll take care of our child at home." Here's the twist. My wife knew I wasn't a big fan of her friend, who is still single and 3 years younger, a bit more carefree. I didn't want to come across as controlling, advising her to watch out for her friend, as she might not be the best influence. On the morning of July 4th, I took an unusual step and decided to call the babysitter myself. Normally, my wife handles these arrangements, and I had to find the sitter's number on her phone. I thought offering the babysitter a higher hourly rate might change her mind. If it worked out, I planned to surprise my wife and let her know we could go to the event together. After all, I wanted to share the news once I had the babysitter situation sorted out and enjoy the satisfaction of pulling off a last-minute miracle. Things started to unravel when I called the babysitter and asked her to reconsider sitting for my son that evening. Even though she had initially declined, she appeared surprised when I used the word reconsider and told me it was the first time I had asked her about that day. Her surprise caught me off guard, and I inquired if she remembered my wife calling her to arrange the evening. A week earlier, she confirmed she hadn't received any call from my wife. I quickly improvised, telling her that my wife had actually called a family member instead. It became clear that my wife had lied for some reason, though I couldn't figure out why, causing concern. I arranged for the sitter to come to our house at 10 p.m., and my wife mentioned she would be leaving around 8 p.m. for the event. Before ending the call with the sitter, I made sure to tell her not to inform my wife about her coming over. I explained that I wanted to surprise my wife and keep the outing I had planned a secret. I almost stumbled over my words when the sitter reminded me that I had mentioned my wife's earlier attempt to secure the date and time. I managed to cover it up by saying that we both thought the date night might have been canceled, but since she was on board, it would still be a nice surprise. As planned, my wife left around 8 p.m. I patiently waited for the sitter, who arrived on time. Once she was there, I headed to the party my wife had mentioned. Honestly, I had a suspicion that she might not show up and go somewhere else instead, but to my surprise, she was indeed at the party. Her friend greeted me upon my arrival, and seeing me there surprised her. She quickly called my wife over. It's an understatement to say she was just shocked. Her reaction was more like utter disbelief. It had only been around 3 hours since my wife left home, but she already seemed quite intoxicated. Her eyes were bloodshot, and her reception towards me was chilly. She repeatedly asked why I was there and who was taking care of our child. I reassured her that I had the babysitter situation under control, and she shouldn't worry. I just wanted us to enjoy the evening together and watch the fireworks display. The party, in a medium-sized setting with maybe 15, 20 people, had a noticeable gender ratio, more guys than girls, almost like a 2-to-1 ratio. We managed to move past the awkward initial interaction, but that still didn't explain why my wife had been deceptive about the outing. The event seemed to revolve around a game night with a focus on playing truth or dare games. I overheard one of the guys suggesting they get back to the game. I decided it was time to catch up on what I had missed, and joined a friendly group of guys, the ones quite talkative due to the flowing drinks or their outgoing personalities. Amidst the gathering, my wife's behavior became agitated and uneasy, and she expressed her desire to leave and go home. Her sudden request to leave raised a red flag for me, suggesting that she was definitely hiding something. I assured her we could head home, but I asked for a moment to try some drinks since I had just arrived. I headed to the kitchen and struck up a conversation with one of the guys there. After introducing myself to a random guy, I inquired if he was enjoying the party. He introduced himself as well and confirmed that he was indeed having a good time. I told him I was interested in making a move on one of the girls at the party, but I wasn't sure who was available. I began pointing to the different girls one by one, and he helped me identify who was already in a relationship and who seemed open to approach. Using this approach, I eventually pointed to my wife without revealing her identity to the stranger. I then asked him what he thought about her. He mentioned that my wife was attractive, but he warned me that she was off limits because she arrived with the guy he knew as a friend. I pretended to be interested and asked him to share more details about this guy. The stranger went on to give me information about my wife's affair partner, explaining that they had met at a concert and had been involved with each other fornicatorily since then. This revelation really hit me hard. The timeline of when my wife attended the concert and met this guy matched up perfectly. This struck a chord because I was also present at that very same concert. What bothered me was the fact that I was with her most of the time during the event, except when she wanted to get some snacks and insisted on going alone. I recall that it took her an unusually long time to return with her snacks, but I brushed it off, assuming there was a long line or she needed to use the restroom. This incident occurred about a month ago, and since then, she has been frequently leaving the house and even had a trip out of town. This new revelation left me questioning everything. The stranger was boasting about my wife as if she were some kind of prize he had won for his friend. He kept on talking, sharing a few more details. He explained that he had come to the party to pursue my wife's friend. When he described her as a free spirit, I wasn't sure if my reaction was noticeable, but I couldn't fake it anymore. Just then, my wife's friend joined the conversation, possibly realizing that my questions were leading to the truth about my wife's affair. However, it was too late, and I could tell that she was also part of the deception. I excused myself from the conversation but asked my wife's friend about my wife's whereabouts. She suggested checking the patio, and that's where I found my wife talking to the guy. It seemed like they were either having a heated discussion or she was trying to convince him of something. I approached them and introduced myself to the man who was involved with my wife, but before I could say anything to him, my wife hastily pulled me away, insisting that we should leave the party. I swatted her hand away with anger and told her she could leave because I wanted to have a talk with the man. I confronted him directly, introducing myself as her husband. I asked him straightforwardly if he knew my wife was married before getting involved with her. Considering I had already discovered the truth about their relationship, I have a somewhat imposing presence that I use to my advantage in confrontations. Honestly, I wasn't looking to fight him if he genuinely didn't know she was married. My little show of subtle aggression was meant to let my wife know that I had uncovered her infidelity and to unsettle the guy a bit. I repeated my question to him, making it clear that I didn't want to ruin the party by starting a brawl, but I needed to know if he was aware of my wife's marital status before getting involved with her. My wife was getting anxious and tried to hold me back while apologizing. The guy, seeing the bottle in my hand and realizing he was cornered on the patio with no support, fell for my act and started apologizing as well. He mentioned that he didn't intend to cause any trouble and that he had only started talking to my wife without knowing she was married. I inquired about the number of times they had been together, and he gave a response. I simply wished him a good night and walked away. I hopped in my car and drove back home. I told my wife that I wanted a divorce. I checked into a hotel where I'm writing down my story as a form of self-therapy. I'm feeling lost about what steps to take. This is my first experience with divorce, and I'm completely unfamiliar with co-parenting since I didn't grow up in a household like that. What I do know is that I can't bear the thought of seeing that woman, and this incident is making me physically sick.
Welcome to Lost Relation Chronicles.
There's an old saying that loose lips sink ships. Sometimes the best way to resolve a problem or a situation is to wait it out. The problem we humans have is that we are so busy trying to push the situation to get the problem behind us that we lose sight of what's right in front of us. After 3 years of marriage, my loving wife had filed for a divorce while I was on a 2-week run in the farthest corner of the company's sales territory. We sold computers to set up to run certain lines of equipment. I was one of the few that could also install them. As a result, I had been sent in to set 3 new installments up. In the divorce petition was the reason why she had filed. According to a third-party statement, I was having an ongoing affair with her father's secretary. It was humorous because his secretary worked at his state capitol office. That was 275 miles roughly from where we lived in Jackson, Missouri. It made it sound like I was taking 2 days a week to travel to the Capitol to stay overnight in a hotel and drive back the next day. Upon my first day back, I was fired. No reason was given, but I was paid what was due according to the state's labor laws. I believed but could not prove it was because of what was being claimed by my wife in her divorce petition. My boss and my wife's family were members of the same community church. I smelled a setup. I had only met my father-in-law's secretary once, and that was during our formal engagement party. She had tried to come on to me, and I had shut her down. Someone had seen the chance for advantage and went for it. The question was who and why now. Rachel's father was more of a follower than a man who could stand on his own. He got into politics only when his father had decided to retire. His great-grandfather, a career politician, had known when the interstate was going to be built and had bought the land around it all throughout the state. He had one rule. He only leased the land for development. When the lease ran out, the improvements torn down ready for new development. The family ended up using some to develop their own in chain and bought other businesses. When he died, the family was super rich as a result and had continued on as he did. It was almost like a golden parachute for the whole family. He had won the seat in a landslide and had kept it ever since. It hadn't even been a week since I had been served in here. We were standing before Judge Donald McDonald. I had not even hired a lawyer and was sleeping at a friend's place until I got back on my feet. My wife's lawyer, a well-known feminist who was from state capitol, wanted to get the court moving towards the divorce. Even to the judge, this just seemed to be rushed, and he wondered why. He was hoping to find something that would slow down the plaintiff's rush for judgment. It gave us both reasons for wanting to slow things down. What had stuck out right away was that my wife's lawyer had scheduled the first appointment before the judge the same day she filed. I listened with interest to what she had to say in her opening statement. The judge then asked me what I had to say. Your Honor, 2 things have happened. First of all, we are all here before you because of hearsay. There is no proof. As for my wife Rachel and I, as far as I knew, everything was fine, I said. Secondly, I believe it's primarily because my wife Rachel is about to come into the rest of her family trust. Under state law, when that happens, I automatically would be entitled to half if we got divorced. How soon is that going to happen? The judge asked. On her 25th birthday, which in less than 6 months away, I said. The judge picked up the petition and read the complaint through in full for the first time. After pausing for a few, he said, Mr. Richards, do you have anything further to add? Only that my former boss is my wife's father's best friend. They, like my wife and I, are members of the same church. When I returned from my last sales trip, I was terminated, and no reason was given. I explained. I request that my wife be forced to pay my lost wages until this is resolved. Her current trust is worth $10 million and is still being controlled by her father. On her next birthday, she gets full access to the rest, which will bring the total amount up to $100 million. At that time, according to the way the trust was set up, her father also loses his control over it. The judge turned to the feminist lawyer and asked, Do you wish to dispute the facts that were just explained to me, Ms. Livingston? No, Your Honor, that's why I filed, because the wife feels that there is no way they as a couple can work their differences out. Ms. Livingston explained. The judge saw me smiling. Any further thoughts, Mr. Richards? Only one, Your Honor, I said. My wife is 6 weeks pregnant with our first child, and I think that she is being influenced by others because of my point of view. Having perked the judge's interest, he said. Explain further, please. My wife's family and friends are all politically aligned with one party's point of view. I am an independent with more of a conservative point of view, I said. I feel her extended family are afraid that I am going to expose our unborn child to my point of view. With the political environment we are living with, the fact that hearsay is being used implies that this may be the very cause. There's no proof of that, Your Honor, Ms. Livingston said with excitement. You can't allow hearsay to be used in court. The judge looked at me with a big smile, then turned to my wife's lawyer. You're right, Ms. Livingston, we can't accept hearsay. That is why you're going to get the lady who provided the statement to appear before me so she can give the names of the party and their legal addresses who claim to witness these things happening. I want them so I can subpoena them so they can testify before me in court, the judge said in anger. And since Mr. Richards, as you have pointed out, has been evicted from his own house and fired because of those same influences that started this, I'm ordering Mrs. Richards to pay him $5,000 a month temporary support, retroactive from the day this was filed before the court, so his first payment is due. Your Honor, you can't do this, Ms. Livingston said. The witness lives and works in the Capitol. Was your client's husband allowed to get anything out of the house? Did his wife confront him with the accusation? Judge Donald asked. No, Your Honor, to both questions, she replied. This statement was just recently obtained. By whom? You acted just like a politician, saw a chance to earn $1 and take advantage of a situation to affect the outcome. Judge McDonald said firmly. Come back and hear again, Ms. Livingston, with a divorce that appears to be over the difference of views of those outsides of the family itself, and I will hold you in contempt. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor, she said meekly. Ms. Livingston, in my court, I expect both parties to physically present, so have her here the next time you appear. One more question, who is paying your bill? The judge asked. John Brownstone, she answered. The local representative for the State House, the judge said, who spends 90% of his time at the state capitol. Yes, Your Honor, I said. He's my father-in-law. How do you get along? The judge asked. We tolerate each other, I said. When he starts talking about making the country a socialist country, I leave the room. We both know each other's views, and I see his conduct as trying to put a wedge between my wife and I. So, you haven't talked to your wife since you have been served? The judge said. No, Your Honor. I did swing by the house to talk to her, but learned from the security hired by her father to watch the place that she was out of town and that the locks had been changed. She has either changed her phone number or blocked me. Ms. Livingston, where is Mrs. Richards currently residing? The judge asked. In the Capitol, with her father. Ms. Livingston responded. I see this is looking more and more like a hit job to me. Looks like Mr. Richards' view of things is exactly what is happening. I expect you both to appear before me a week from today at 9 a.m. The court is adjourned. The judge said. I showed up in court with a lawyer this time. I could see my wife Rachel sitting beside Ms. Livingston and a lady I did not know. After taking the bench, Judge Donald McDonald went right to work. Ms. Livingston, has the defendant being paid the court-ordered alimony? The judge asked. No, Your Honor. Her father is refusing to allow it to be paid out of the trust. Ms. Livingston replied. Let me address your client directly and have her answer through the mic. The judge said. Mrs. Richards, you are of legal age, are you not? Judge Donald asked. Yes, I am, Rachel replied. Where are you residing at this time? The judge asked. With my father at the house in Jefferson, Rachel replied. You are living off of your trust right now. What were you using for money these last 5 years? My husband and I both worked very hard. We did not need to touch the trust. 5 weeks ago, I told my father that I wanted some of the trust money to remodel one of the bedrooms into a nursery. Rachel explained. He decided I should quit my job because I could use the trust money. My husband said no, we can make it on our own. My father said he didn't want anything affecting the birth of the child, and my working may do that. This letter used to file from a divorce. How did you come in possession of it? The judge asked. My father said it was mailed to his office, and he brought it to me. Did your father out and out refuse to write the check from the trust for support? The judge asked. No. He said I should refuse to settle or pay anything until all the lawyers have worked everything out. Rachel said. So, since we need both our signatures on any trust check, he just refused to sign. Bad mistake, Mrs. Richards. I'm holding you in contempt of court. Officer, escort the lady to jail as soon as this hearing is over. What your father says or does has nothing to do with this case. You, in my eyes, are an adult and will be treated accordingly. Mrs. Richards, I order you to turn over possession of the marital home to Mr. Richards since you are not residing there. He helped pay for it, so he has just as much right to be there as you. Ms. Livingstone, if Mr. Richards is not back in his home by 4 this afternoon, I will hold you responsible. I looked at my wife as her face turned white. It was fun watching her have to deal with the fact that her father's wisdom had led her directly to jail. There was no way her dad could get here before the end of the court day, which meant Rachel would be exposed to a world she had never seen. Ms. Livingston was beginning to realize that she was not dealing with a liberal-minded judge. Ms. Livingston, I presume the other lady is the one that wrote the notarized hearsay letter claiming that there was an affair, so have her approach the mic. Name, age, occupation, and address, please. The judge said. Nora Charles, 34, an office clerk at the Capitol. She said before disclosing her address. Do you have the names and addresses I requested? The judge asked. Yes. How do you know these ladies? The judge asked, having a pretty good idea of what she was going to say. I work with them at the Capitol. She responded. She then walked up and handed him the list. Handing the paper to a clerk, he said, have the subpoenas drawn up and served. All charges are to be assigned to the plaintiff. Ms. Livingston was livid. She had never seen a judge act like him. Are there any further items to bring up today? The judge asked. How long will Mrs. Richards be held? Until someone presents this court with the alimony for this and next month's support. The judge said. Your Honor, that's not fair. Surely there is some wiggle room here. Ms. Livingston said. It appears that the only reason any of us are here is because of the conduct of a father who can't stay out of his daughter's business. The judge said firmly. It's obvious this situation is really all about the trust Mrs. Richards is coming into. Her father sees himself losing his control over it and her. He also seems to believe that if you don't live with the same views of things, you're a danger to his influence over his adult daughter. Therefore, Ms. Livingston, get to this court by next Friday a copy of Mrs. Richards's trust. The court is dismissed. I watched the court officer escort my wife out of the court across the street to the county jail. I knew it had to be humbling for her. The problem was she was constantly pulled by her father to help further his political career. I had refused to allow her to become the social butterfly he required. By marrying his daughter, I had brought an end to his eager pawn. For the first time in her life, she had to live within a budget. I realized that he had been slowly drawing her back into her former lifestyle. While I was on my last sales trip, he had gone for the kill. Everybody had underestimated the judge except for me. I had noticed Rachel that first year at Southeast Missourian University. Who wouldn't? She was a real looker. I knew that the men would be lining up to get the chance to date her, and I was right. With long black hair, a slender softy body whose natural curves drew you, and she could easily capture a man's attention and did. She had a too trusting personality which, if taken advantage of, could cause a lot of problems. She seemed to be involved in all social or political activities. It was and never would be my cup of tea. I had more important things to do. I had to work to eat and for room and board. For my parents, my borrowing the funds to attend school was too much. We were taught from being young to find a way to pay our way. It took 4 years, but I graduated with honors, just barely making it. There were rumors not proved that her graduation certificate was bought and paid for. 6 months later, John Brownstone was doing a tour with his daughter in a plant where I was installing the latest computer system and programming it. She strolled over to introduce herself, and when I got up to say hello, I was welcomed with the greatest smile. Hi, David, we went to school together, but I never saw you outside of class, Rachel said. We thought you were an introvert. No, I had to work full-time to get through school. I disclosed. So, between school, studying, and full-time work hours, my social life got set to the side. Since then, I have lived as cheap as possible to cut down my student debt as much as possible. Will you be in Cape Girardeau on Friday? She asked. Yes, I work out of Cape, so I still live there, I said. I should be finished setting this new system tonight. I will spend tomorrow making sure it's all working before heading back. Applebee's Friday is 7 then? Rachel said. It's a date, I replied. About an hour and a half later, just as I was finishing up, the general manager came over and told me that the representative's daughter had been asking questions about me. I told him that we had gone to school together but associated with different crowds. He smiled and said, "There's something in you that she's attracted to young man, so be careful because that lady is marriage material." We met and the evening went well. We went to a bar along the University Row and had a few dances. I guess she got upset when I didn't ask her for a second date. When she asked her friends what was wrong with her, they told her the simple truth. He still sees you as belonging to a separate world. He has worked hard to get where he is. You haven't worked an honest day in your life, nor do you appear to want to. He's at the point where he's ready to settle down and start a family. That means joint responsibility and an approach to life you don't have. You're still spreading your wings and living like nothing means anything. It had upset her family when she took a job, got an apartment, and started living in the real world like everyone else. It didn't take long for her to realize that she had no clue about how the real world worked. For Rachel, it was a life-changing experience. She was learning at her age what it was like to do the basics like cooking, dishes, and laundry. We all saw her struggle with normal things we do in life as she learned them as an adult. Some of her high-class friends dumped her as a result. They couldn't understand what she meant when she told them they needed to get off their privileged life and discover the reality of most. It had been a rough 6 months, but I had noticed she was adjusting. So, one Saturday, I saw her in the mall sitting on a bench looking sad and lost in thought. I went over and sat down beside her. "Rachel, there's a community dance being held on the fairgrounds tonight. Would you like to go with me?" I asked. "Why now?" she asked in complete surprise. "Because you now understand the world I live in and can see some of the phoniness of yours," I said. "As a result, you have grown up a lot the hard way. You have shown great courage and determination these past few months and have earned my respect." We learned that night that we both love to dance. It was fun to see her actually enjoy herself without having any airs influencing her. She asked me on the way home why she'd been accepted by so many without question. I said, "Because you were just being yourself. For a person with your upbringing, that speaks volumes." As I walked her to her apartment door, we kissed for the first time. It wasn't long until we were seen as a couple. Her mother was thrilled with the changes in her daughter. It amazed her to find out that she had learned to be a pretty damn good cook. Her father was another story. He was not impressed that his daughter was becoming a well-balanced adult woman. He hated me because I would not discuss politics with him. One night, out of frustration, he went at me. His wife and daughter were shocked when I went at him, using his own arguments against him like the skilled politician he thought he was. Later, privately, Rachel's mother warned us that her husband hated to be made to look like a fool. "David, he expected you to fold because he thought you knew nothing. He was not prepared for the facts that came from your lips. He thought you were a shallow person. You proved you're not. He will hold a grudge until it forces him to try to take you down." I had learned young that power and influence earned was always respected by the one earning it. When being handed it on a silver platter, it became a tool to keep others under your control, and it became corrupted. It had been at my parents' place on Christmas Eve that I got down on my knee and presented the ring to her. Less than a year later, we were married. Her father wanted to make it the biggest event of the year. Rachel had shot that down fast. It was Monday afternoon before I went to see her. Rachel needed that time to think things out. Judge McDonald had done us all a favor by throwing her in jail. Her high and mighty father couldn't get to her now. Her mother had always been a buffer for us from him until they got divorced. I watched her walk in looking sad and depressed until she saw who her visitor was. Seeing it was me, she broke into a smile as the tears started to flow. Sitting down across from me, she said, "He did it again, didn't he?" "Looks like it," I replied. "I was told you had filed because of your affair," Rachel said. "When did you figure it all out?" "When Ms. Livingston had to reveal who was paying her bill," I said. "What's behind all of my dad's actions? It has to be more than just revenge against you?" Rachel said, "To me, it boils down to something that must be hidden in the trust." I said, "Because for some reason he wants our marriage ended before it fully takes effect." "When did you figure it out?" I asked. "You got to understand that being pregnant has got my emotions working irrationally at times. Dad broke the phony news of your affair and I lost it." Rachel said, "If he put something in front of me, I signed it because I was upset over losing you. This weekend, out of boredom, I read all the documents. When I read that it was Dad's secretary that you're accused of sleeping with, I knew he had set us up. So, what are you going to do after you get released from jail?" I said with a big grin. "Going home with my hubby after telling my father we are done." Rachel said, "Remind me to tell my mother about his latest stunt." "I'm just glad we figured it out before our marriage was destroyed," I said. "Thanks for not saying I was a fool for falling for his bullshit," Rachel said. "If you were half the man you are, you still would be a better man than my father. David, always remember that I fell in love with the man you are. Don't ever change. It's you that keeps me grounded. Mom said you coming into my life made me a better and different person. She was right. My value and outlook about things have changed so much. I am so mad at myself for allowing myself to be drawn back into the bullshit." I went and visited my wife every day until Friday. We talked about everything. Rachel and I were surprised to learn that the judge did not want us sitting with our lawyers when we appeared before him this morning. The sheriff's department officer who told us said the judge does not want us identified before certain people are required to testify. As a result, my wife would be deliberately held back and would arrive late in her everyday clothing. Rachel and I walked hand in hand the Friday morning from the county jail and slid into the back of the courtroom just as Judge McDonald took his seat. I see the three ladies who claim to have witnessed the romantic relationship of David Richards are here, the judge said. I would like them to go stand beside him if he is here in this court. Rachel and I watched as the three ladies went over and stood beside a man sitting with her father, John Brownstone. David Richards, will you please approach the bench? The judge requested. The room went into shock as I stood up and joined the man the ladies had pointed out heading to the bench. When we both had almost reached him, he told us to stop. Rachel Richards, would you come forward and identify which man is your husband? The judge asked. Rachel came forward. Her eyes and face were smiling big time. Once she reached us, she stood beside me, taking my hand into hers. It appears that these three ladies had witnessed an affair by someone using David's name in a deliberate attempt to destroy his marriage and ruin his life, the judge said before going on. The question came to me was who would benefit from having this marriage break up? Who had the financial means to pay for it? I had to ask myself why. Those reasons were why I ordered that a copy of the trust be supplied to my office. I had a trust lawyer review it. Stan Johnson, can you step forward and testify what you learned? Rachel looked at me and whispered, do you know anything? I whispered back, no. Putting all the legalese into common language, there is a clause that says if Rachel Brownstone is not married by her 25th birthday, full control goes to her father until she reaches the age of 40. He said, since she is, it has legally been hers since the day she got married. Not has only the court been scammed, but it appears that Rachel has too. Stan, send a copy to the Attorney General office. Inform him of what we now know. Since John Brownstone is our state representative, it should be his office that investigates the situation to see if criminal charges should be laid. The judge said, does the plaintiff have something to say? Yes, Your Honor, I do. Rachel said, I wish to withdraw my petition for divorce. Granted. Judge McDonald said, hire Stan to get your trust legally in your hands. The court is dismissed. We watched the man claiming to be me taken in for questioning, along with her father who looked defeated. Ms. Livingston handed me the envelope containing the $10,000. Mr. Richards, you could probably sue your father-in-law for a lot more than this. Ms. Livingston said, I wonder how much they were all paid to try to get the divorce done. We don't have to, Rachel said. He has just written himself out of his grandchildren's lives forever. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
Welcome to Lost Relation Chronicles.
It had started snowing lightly about an hour ago, but now, as I stared out the bus window, the snowfall had transformed into a near blizzard. My forehead rested against the cold glass, and my thoughts drifted back to what had led me to take this bus trip in early January. 8 weeks earlier, I noticed the blinking light on my old answering machine, wondering who could possibly be leaving a message. My social life had been practically non-existent during the past year as I focused on finishing my PhD dissertation. When I pressed play, I was pleasantly surprised to hear a familiar voice. Hey, Ryan, it's Chloe. Chloe Harris. Mom and I are going to be in town tomorrow to check out the graduate program at your university. Maybe we could grab dinner? Give me a call on my cell. I'm really looking forward to seeing you again. I love you. Bye. Chloe and I had dated for over a year, and our connection had grown deep. One evening, she told me her father was moving the family back to North Carolina. She didn't want to go, but she felt she had no choice for her mother's sake. I never liked her father. He was arrogant and selfish, and I suspected he might have been abusive to her mom. Just 2 days after that conversation, Chloe was gone, and I realized how much I truly cared for her. Picking up the phone, I dialed her number and accepted the invitation for dinner. The following evening, I arrived at one of the best restaurants in town and spotted Chloe and her mother, Caroline, sitting at a table with an older man I did not know. As I approached the table, they saw me and Chloe got up from her seat, as did her mother and the older man. Chloe jumped into my arms and kissed me with a great deal of passion. She whispered in my ear, God, I have missed you. Carol, as her mother liked to be called, gave me a hug and introduced the man as her father, David Bennett. After spending time over dinner catching up on what was happening with our lives the past 5 years, Chloe said her grandfather had a perplexing problem he needed help in solving. Seems that he had done some investigation into my background and discovered I was getting my PhD in computer science and technology with an emphasis in forensic accounting. Ryan, I don't know what Chloe has told you about me. I own a very large business with its headquarters in Charlotte. I am the 3rd largest producer of lumber and forest-related products in the U.S. I own a lot of property in the Southeast, as well as several million acres in Oregon and Washington state. In the last 18 months, my profit margin has remained steady, but when I look at the bottom line, the cash is not there. I have looked at the expenditures to income ratios, and they are in acceptable parameters, he explained. Someone is stealing, and I can't figure out how or who. Chloe tells me that you might be able to help, and I sure could use it. He went on explaining he couldn't trust anyone in upper management as they might be involved, although he sure hated to think that any of these longtime employees and friends would do this to him. After asking him several questions and receiving the right answers, I agreed to look into his problem. He then produced several computer CD disks from his jacket pocket. These disks have the complete financial records for the past 3 years, he said. I sure hope you can help me. It will be several weeks before I can start. I am getting ready to defend my dissertation early next month, and I have to debug the software program I wrote to analyze deceptive accounting practices, I explained. I promised him some answers by mid-January. I finished my degree and debugged the software program in late December and began my investigation into David Bennett's financials. By January 3rd, I not only had the what, but also the how it was being done. All I needed to do now was find the who. When I made the telephone call to Chloe telling her of my progress, and before she put her grandfather on the line, she said, "I love you." She then put her grandfather on the line. He wanted to send his company business jet to bring me to Charlotte. That's not a good idea, I said. I'll need to nose around your offices and access your company's servers, and I don't want to raise any red flags about myself, and a sure way to do that would be to have you send a jet to Central Florida to pick me up. As luck would have it, the Aircraft Mechanics Union went on strike the following day, shutting down the entire commercial airline industry and forcing me onto riding a Greyhound bus in the middle of the night during a blizzard. Just then I was shaken from my thoughts as the driver began slowing the bus as he proceeded down the exit ramp from the interstate. Shifting gears, he turned onto the street to begin the short drive to the bus terminal. 5 minutes later, we arrived. The clock at the station read 2:20 and the outside temperature of 28 degrees. Not bad, only 10 minutes late. Retrieving my backpack, containing my laptop computer, from the overhead rack, I proceeded to the front of the bus, stepped onto the sidewalk, and followed the driver to the baggage compartment. He handed me my bag, and I quickly entered the warm terminal waiting room. Looking around, I saw David Bennett striding toward me. He was alone. The look on his face told me something was wrong, very wrong. Taking my bag from me, he turned and walked toward the parking lot. Placing the bag in the back of his Mercedes ML 550 SUV, he said, "There has been an accident. Chloe is in the hospital. Caroline is with her." During the 40-minute drive, he told me as much of the details as he knew. The state police told me that according to several witnesses, a white cargo van deliberately forced her car from the road and down an embankment, rolling several times. The van never slowed down and sped away. The van was found several hours later abandoned in the parking garage of a local shopping mall. It had been wiped clean of all fingerprints. The police lab was now examining it for other possible trace evidence. Because of the storm, cell phone coverage was spotty, so he did not have any updates on Chloe's condition since he had left the hospital 3 hours ago. At that time, she was still unconscious and was undergoing tests to determine the extent of her injuries. He knew she had a broken left wrist and some facial cuts, in addition to possible internal injuries. By the time we arrived, the snow had stopped, but not the cold wind. Parking the SUV in a space reserved for the hospital director, we hurried inside. He won't mind not having his parking spot. I funded the building of this place 2 years ago. He is a good friend. Taking the elevator to the 6th-floor intensive care unit, we walked briskly down the well-lit hallway. As we approached the room, he asked for an update on his granddaughter from one of the doctors standing just outside the door. "Michael," he asked, "what's going on? How is she?" "David," he replied. "In addition to the broken wrist, she has a couple of cracked ribs. I am waiting on the CAT scan to determine the extent of any internal injuries. She took a nasty blow to her head, but there is no evidence of a fractured skull. The EEG shows strong brain activity, and we should know more in the next 8 to 12 hours. We took her off the ventilator, and right now she is resting comfortably." Before entering the room, David turned to me and introduced the doctor he had spoken to. "Ryan, this is Michael Grayson. He is the head of the neurological department at Duke University Medical School. Michael, Ryan Langston. He is a very close friend of the family." Opening the door, we saw Carol standing next to Chloe's bed. She was lying there with an 4 drip in her right arm. Her left wrist was encased in a fiberglass cast. Her head was bandaged and her face was covered with bruises and several small cuts which had been stitched. Carol threw her arms around her father's neck and began crying onto his shoulders. "Daddy, Daddy, what has he done to my little girl?" She sobbed. How could he do this to his own daughter? I stood there in shock. What was she saying? Calm down, Caroline," David whispered into her ear as he gently led her from the room. Then as he was about to leave the room, he turned to me and mouthed the word, later. I pulled a chair close to Chloe's bed and held her right hand while talking to her. I'm here. It's Ryan. I'm staying right here with you. I'm not leaving you. I talked to her for quite some time, and then must have dozed off because the weak winter sun streamed into the room woke me. As I tried to release her hand, she stirred and gripped my hand, refusing to let go. Her eyes blinked open, and she stared at me asking what had happened. At that moment, Carol and her father stepped into the room. Hearing her question, they rushed to her bedside. You were involved in a very bad accident and have been asleep for over 20 hours, I replied. You are pretty beat up, but you'll get better. As I stood up and tried again to release her hand, she whispered, Don't go. Stay with me, please. Later that afternoon, when Chloe had fallen into an exhausted sleep, David led me from the room saying, You deserve an explanation for what Caroline said this morning. As you know, my daughter and her husband, Benny, separated some years ago. He abandoned her and Chloe. About 18 months ago, he resurfaced demanding money for granting her a divorce. He backed off that demand and told her he would wait until she inherited my estate, and then he would divorce her and take half of her inheritance. He could do this under the laws of this state regarding community property. When I found this out, I changed my will. My entire estate now goes to Chloe. There is only one small problem with this idea. If Chloe dies without being married, the entire estate reverts back to Caroline and he wins. Caroline is convinced that he is behind this accident. I have engaged the services of a private investigator to determine if there is any validity to her claim, he continued. It shouldn't take too long for him to get back to me. Meanwhile, he continued, we'll be staying at a nearby hotel while the doctors run some more tests to determine the extent of Chloe's injuries. Hopefully, we will be able to take her home in 10 days or so. Tuesday was a bright, sunny, but very cold day typical of late January when we brought Chloe home. As David drove up the long driveway, with me riding shotgun and Chloe and her mother in the back seat, I got my first look at David's home. It was huge and reminded me of an English manor house. Stopping in front, we were met by members of his household staff who quickly assisted Chloe up the front steps leading to the massive twin doors leading inside. David and I followed along behind into a large reception hall. A magnificent marble staircase swept up to the second floor. To the left and behind the staircase was an elevator with wood panel doors matching the paneling of the reception hall walls. Immediately to the right of the entrance doors, a set of double doors opened into the library, which also served as David's study. As Chloe, Caroline, and one of the female housekeepers entered the elevator, David escorted me into the library. The girls are going up to their rooms to rest a while before dinner. Let's sit by the fireplace and warm up a little bit. Would you care for a drink? He asked. Pouring 2 brandies, he sat in the leather chair across from me and said, I need to tell you what the private investigator's report revealed about the accident and Benny's involvement. Over the next hour and a half, he filled me in on the private investigator's report. Unfortunately, there was no concrete evidence that would be admissible in court of Benny's involvement in Chloe's accident. However, there was enough circumstantial evidence that we both agreed he was responsible. He had hired 2 illegal aliens to steal a white cargo van and crash it into Chloe's car. Afterward, they disappeared, and the PI had been unable to track them down. David said, I don't think it's going to end with this unsuccessful attempt. Sooner or later he going to try again, and we have to stop him. Got any ideas? Well, I do have a thought, I replied. As you know, Chloe and I have spent a considerable amount of time together over the past 10 days. We have shared a lot of ourselves with each other, and the fondness I have for her has grown into something far greater. I am not sure how she feels about me, but just suppose we were to announce our engagement to be married. In fact, it would not be true, but is sure to get back to Benny, and it would accomplish 2 things. First, he would know that if we were to be married, I would become her heir should something happen to her. Second, it would take the bullseye off her and place it on me. He would have to try to get rid of me before trying to get to her again. That would buy us time to figure out on how to stop him from carrying out his threat against Chloe. David just sat in his chair for several minutes thinking before saying anything. Well, that is certainly one idea. I am confident I could arrange protection for you, but before I agree, we have to discuss this with Caroline and Chloe. They both need to be aware of the personal risk to you should we carry out your plan. I need to think this over for a day before we go any further. I'll give you an answer tomorrow morning, and then we'll discuss it with the girls. Now on to our next problem, David continued. Your cover has been pretty much blown. Everyone in the office knows how close a friend you are to me and my family. So, we need to drop the idea of you working secretly to ferret out the embezzler. Well, let's sleep on it, and we'll come up with something in the morning. The following morning, David took me aside and said, I gave your idea a lot of thought last night and came to the conclusion that it just might work. Let's talk about your plan with Caroline and Chloe after breakfast and get their take on your suggestion. Later that morning after breakfast, David told the two girls he had something to discuss with them. Leading the three of us into the library, he proceeded to outline my plan. As soon as he mentioned the idea of the fake engagement and marriage announcement, Chloe leapt to her feet and ran from the room crying. The remaining three of us sat there stunned. Finally, Caroline stood and said, "I'll go and talk with her and find out what upset her so much." 5 minutes later, she returned with her arm around Chloe and said, "Chloe wants to say something to you, Ryan, in private. Daddy, can we leave them alone for a few minutes?" I stood as Caroline and David left the room, closing the doors to the library behind them. I grasped both of Chloe's hands and led her to the leather sofa where we both sat. She continued to cry softly, but after several minutes, she began talking softly to me. "Ryan," she began, "I don't want a fake engagement. I don't want a phony marriage announcement. Ever since I was a little girl, I dreamed how the man I loved would propose to me, like in a fairy tale where Prince Charming would sweep me off my feet and carry me away in his arms. I know it sounds foolish, and when grandfather began talking about fake engagements and phony weddings, I just lost it. I love you. I want the real thing." With that, she threw her arms around me and began sobbing again into my chest. I held her tightly and whispered in her ear, "I am a real jerk." I released myself from her, slid off the sofa to my knees and continued, "Chloe, I love you with all my heart and soul. I want nothing more than to spend the rest of my life with you. I may not be Prince Charming, but I promise to love and cherish you forever. Will you please marry me?" As I rose to my feet, I grasped her hands and pulled her from her seat. I wrapped my arms around her, and she looked into my eyes and softly replied, "You are my Prince Charming, and this is my fairy tale. Yes, yes, yes." She pulled me closer and kissed me deeply. With my arm around her, we walked to the library doors and opened them to find David and Caroline waiting just outside. "Mother, Grandfather, we have something to tell you," Chloe announced. Later that day, after the four of us had finished making some preliminary plans for an engagement party and selecting a date for the wedding, David and I returned to the library to discuss his other problem. "I am sure the girls will be spending the rest of the day making more detailed plans," he stated. "I need to return to the office on Monday," he continued. "So that gives us 4 days to decide some sort of a plan to smoke out the embezzler." Before I could say anything, my cell phone rang. Looking at the caller ID, I saw it was my attorney and good friend Seth Anderson. "Hey Seth," I said. "What's up?" I sat stunned listening to his reply. "How much did you say? Please repeat that figure. I am not sure I heard you correctly." Seth went on to say he would fax me a completed contract as soon as he looked it over for my signature. Ending the call, I looked at David, who had a puzzled expression on his face. "Wow," I exclaimed. "They want to buy my forensic accounting software package." "Who?" he asked. "The largest distributor of business soft product in the world, Microsoft," I replied. "And they offered me $5 million upfront plus $2 on each unit sold." Seth told me he was going to play hardball with them. I never realized he had that kind of a fastball. "Okay," I continued. "Where were we? Oh yeah, a plan. Last night I hacked into your office mainframe server. I'll install some new security apps so no one else can do it in the future. From what I learned, I've narrowed the culprit down to one of 2 men in the purchasing department, Henry Wallace or Kyle Grayson. Now I already know the what, how, and by next week, the who. With your permission, I would like to purchase 10 new laptops and special cases for them." I explained to him my plan for not only identifying the embezzler, but also possibly getting his stolen money back. He agreed, and I went about adapting one of my old programs to accomplish my goals. The following afternoon, Chloe and I, accompanied by 2 of the biggest security men I ever saw, went to the local mall to shop for an engagement ring. At the second store we went into, Chloe found the exact setting she wanted. She was shocked when I told the sales representative that we wanted to see a selection of diamonds in a 1 to 2 carat range. When I selected a flawless 2-carat blue-white stone, she protested that it was much too expensive and she would be happy with something much smaller. "Sweetheart," I told her, "Prince Charming has no problem being able to purchase this for you. After all, it's his job to make sure your fairy tale comes true." The look on her face was priceless. After making arrangements to have the ring fitted properly, the sales rep promised to have it ready for her to wear in about an hour, or they would deliver it the next day. I told him we would be back later in the day, after doing some other shopping in the mall. It was a little after 5 when we arrived back home, and Chloe ran inside to show her mother and grandfather her ring. I followed along with a huge grin on my face. It really felt great to see her so happy and excited. When some order of calm resumed, David informed me that the fax from Seth Anderson had arrived and was on his desk in the library. He accompanied me into the library and told me to sit at his desk while I read the cover letter and the contract. Everything was spelled out in black and white and was just as Seth had described it to me yesterday morning. I signed it and faxed it back to Seth's office. In his cover letter, Seth informed me that as soon as he received the signed contract back, the initial money would be deposited in my account. All of a sudden, I was a wealthy man. Over dinner that evening, I told Chloe and her mother what had happened, and for the second time that day, the look on Chloe's face was priceless. David produced a bottle of champagne, and we celebrated our engagement and my good fortune. The rest of the evening was spent in pleasant conversation about the wedding plans and discussing possible honeymoon destinations. On Friday, the weather turned nasty as a front swept through down from Canada, bringing overcast skies and snow. By Saturday, the snow had stopped and was replaced by very cold temperatures, never getting above the low teens. Chloe and I spent a great deal of time together in front of the fireplace. I managed to finish my adaptation of an old program I had developed and burned a set of discs for use next week. Sunday evening, I logged on to David's company's mainframe computer. I was checking the purchasing department's records when I spotted it. "Gotcha, you maggot," I mumbled to myself. I shut down my laptop and walked downstairs to find David sitting at his desk in the library. "I know who the embezzler is," I said. "It's Kyle Grayson, the department head. He got greedy and embezzled another $250,000. I know how to get the money back. All of it." "Grayson, huh?" David replied. "I would never have guessed it would be him. He's been working for me for over 15 years. I told him what I had discovered. He used his company laptop to send an email to his accomplice. Surprise, surprise. Guess who? None other than your good-for-nothing son-in-law, Benny Harris." "You're kidding," he responded. "Nope," I exclaimed. "This is what I am going to do with those new laptops, in cases you allowed me to order." I went on to explain my plan to recover the stolen money and at the same time to turn Benny and Kyle against each other. With any luck, not only would we be able to put them both away for the theft, but also gather evidence of Benny's involvement in Chloe's accident. The laptops and cases were to being shipped by FedEx directly to David's office Monday morning, and on Tuesday the fun would begin. At least for David and me, but not so much for Kyle and Benny. We left early Monday morning for David's office. He and I sat in the back seat of his Mercedes SUV, and 2 of the 10 security agents assigned to protect David and his family sat in front. When we arrived, sometime after 9:30, the agent in the front passenger seat got out, opened the rear door, and accompanied us inside. The driver parked the car and joined us while we waited for the elevator taking us to David's office on the top floor. David placed his and my briefcase on his office desk and then took me around, introducing me to his staff and colleagues. He made it a point to introduce me as his granddaughter's fiancé, particularly when meeting with Kyle Grayson. When we returned to his office, the FedEx delivery had arrived, and the laptops had been placed in the conference room adjacent to his office. I began unpacking the laptops, collecting the serial numbers and entering them onto the documents each department head would have to sign when we exchanged their old one for their new one. After all, the laptops were company property and had to be accounted for as they were not considered personal gifts. Before connecting them to their respective battery chargers, I opened each case and installed a GPS tracking chip. I would be now able to pinpoint the location of each laptop if the need arose. I double-checked the carrying cases, and they were just as I had ordered. Each had the company name and logo stitched into the outside leather cover with each department head's name and title below. They really looked great. By now, it was almost 2 in the afternoon, and David entered the conference room and asked, "Hey, let's get some lunch in the company dining room." Once there, he made a big deal talking about my upcoming marriage to his granddaughter. Around 4 o'clock, we left the office for home, accompanied by the same 2 security agents. As we were leaving in the SUV, he turned to me and with a wink said, "That ought to get the pot boiling." I bet Grayson was on the phone to Benny before lunch was over with the news. Oh yeah. I also had my secretary email each department head notifying him of the laptop exchange tomorrow at 10 o'clock in the conference room. Tuesday morning at 10, all the department heads were assembled in the conference room with their old laptops. David announced, "If you don't know, Ryan has his Ph.D. in computers and will be assisting you in the transfer of data from your old laptop to your new one. Also, the leather laptop cases are my gift to you for your years of loyal service to me and this organization." "Gentlemen," I began, "please sign the 2 documents before you. The first acknowledging the return of your old company laptop and the second one for the issuance of your new company laptop. Mrs. Davidson, Mr. Bennett's secretary, will collect them and return copies of them for your records in just a few minutes." After the 2 documents were collected, I continued, "Along with your new laptop, you will find 2 additional items, a firewire cable, and a computer disk. At this time, please connect the firewire to the appropriate ports on your old laptop and your new one. Then boot up both laptops. Turn off any security applications you may have run, and this will enable you to transfer your data from your old laptop to your new one. Also, please transfer any additional applications you may have installed in addition to the ones that came with your computer. Updated versions of these older applications have already been pre-installed for you on your new one. The transfer of data may take several minutes depending on the amount of data to be transferred. Double-check that you are transferring all the data files and additional applications you may have installed. The next step will be to reformat your old laptop hard drive, erasing it completely so that we may safely donate the old computers to a worthy charity and not give away company information. 5 minutes later, after all the department heads indicated that they had transferred everything they wanted, I continued. Now disconnect your FireWire connection and put the computer disk in front of you in your old laptop. Double-click in the icon labeled Wipe Clean that appears on your screen and follow the directions. When the program finishes, you will be instructed to restart your laptop. You should see a screen that states hard drive contains no applications or data. When this happens, the computer disk will automatically be ejected. Please return this disk to me when you are finished. As I collected these disks, I was careful to place the one Kyle Grayson had on the bottom of the stack. After the conference room had been cleared, I took Kyle Grayson's old laptop and his copy of the Wipe Clean program back to David's office. These go home with us this evening. It will be very interesting to see what I find out. But I want to work on them away from prying eyes, I told David. Putting them in David's office safe, I returned to the conference room to pack up the other laptops in preparation for donation to a local school. I reinstalled an operating system and a few simple applications that children would be able to use. Later that evening, after dinner, I told Caroline, Chloe, and David I was going to work on Grayson's computer in the library, and they were welcome to join me and watch. I booted up his laptop, installed the Wipe Clean disk, and typed the command Discover. The program worked just as I had programmed it to do several nights ago. All of Kyle's files reappeared. I turned to David and stated, "This computer is your company's property and legally, therefore, you are entitled to see anything that may be stored on its hard drive. Now let's see what secrets it holds." Glancing through the file directory, I opened one particular file. When it appeared on the screen, I exclaimed, "Perfect, just what I was hoping to find." I explained to the two girls and David that when people sit in front of a computer screen, they have an unrealistic expectation of privacy. They believe no one will ever see what they are doing. Kyle Grayson was no exception. The file that I opened contained a list of offshore bank accounts, along with the passwords to access them. Each account listed Kyle Grayson and Benny Harris as co-owners. I quickly went online and opened each account using the passwords Kyle had so thoughtfully provided. "Look at this. He made his last deposit last night," I said. "I think it's time to make some withdrawals." It took me no time at all to set up a secret account for David and transfer all the money to him. I then changed the passwords to each of those accounts, guaranteeing that neither Kyle or Benny would be able to access the empty account records. There would be no way either Grayson or Harris would be able to track the lost funds from their accounts. "Now the fun really begins," I said. I sent an email to both Grayson and Harris from each of these offshore banks, notifying them that their accounts had been closed and the money transferred as per their instructions. Each of them will believe the other one is responsible for emptying the accounts, and we get to sit back and watch the fur fly, I said with a chuckle. Sure enough, when we arrived at David's office Wednesday, the local police were all over the place conducting interviews and taking statements from everybody there. We were told that Harris had showed up at Grayson's home late last night. There was a violent argument and Benny Harris shot and killed Kyle Grayson. Benny was caught trying to escape, foolishly produced the gun, and waved it at the officers. He was shot and killed before he could fire his weapon. An investigation uncovered the fact that Grayson had been embezzling money from David Bennett's business for several years. He and Benny Harris were partners in the scheme, and there had been a falling out over the stolen money. The money trail went cold when it was discovered the funds from the offshore bank had been withdrawn and transferred by Grayson. It was assumed he had set up another account somewhere else. The money had been transferred so many times that it eventually became lost in cyberspace, and the investigation was closed. 5 months later, on August 21st, Chloe and I were married in a garden on David's estate. Caroline was her matron of honor and David was my best man. For our honeymoon, we went on a 6-month cruise around the world. After all, money was of no concern. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
Welcome to Lost Relation Chronicles.
I'm a 36-year-old man, and I feel like my world is crashing down. I love my wife, Gabby, who's 32, but I'm terrified she might be doing something behind my back. The idea is too embarrassing and messed up to talk about with friends or family. What's worse is that I think one of my coworkers might have slept with her, and everything I've seen so far seems to confirm my fears. Let me explain how we got here. I met Gabby in 2014 at a mall in our city. I was in the food court, standing in line, when I saw her. Funny thing is, I was actually heading to another restaurant, but the line was too long, so I switched. That's when I noticed her, standing near the front, looking absolutely stunning. She caught me staring, laughed, and said she wasn't in line for food. Gabby explained that she was waiting for her cousin, who worked there. Her breaking the ice saved me because I was at a loss for words. We hit it off as we chatted, and I tried to be as funny and charming as possible. When I offered to buy her something while she waited, she asked for a strawberry lemonade. After getting it for her, we continued talking until her cousin came out. Before she left, I mustered the courage to ask for her number, and she gave it to me. That was the start of everything. I did everything I could to win her over. We went on dates, attended events, and even hung out with our friends as a group. By 2017, we were married. Together, we've built a life with 3 amazing kids, 2 daughters and a son. Our journey hasn't been easy, but we've made it work, cutting back on nights out at clubs and concerts while still finding time for occasional fun. Gabby has always been an amazing partner and mother, and I've felt incredibly lucky to have her. Gabby is Cuban, stunningly gorgeous, and has always stood out. My friends used to tease me, saying I'd scored big time. She looks like a mix between Gal Gadot and Salma Hayek, with a curvy figure, tattoos on her arms, and her signature ponytail that she always wears in selfies. Professionally, Gabby works alongside her sister as an interior decorator, and together they do really well for themselves. Meanwhile, I work as a maintenance man, a job I've loved for the past 7 years. Things took a dark turn last Wednesday. There's a guy at work, Daryl, who works in the shipping area. We're not exactly friends, but we're acquaintances and often chat during lunch, usually about basketball. The most time we've spent together outside of work was playing dice in the parking lot a while back. One weekend, my car had brake problems, so Gabby had to drive me to work and pick me up afterward. The first time she came to pick me up, she accidentally arrived 30 minutes early and had to wait in the parking lot. That's when things started to feel off. When I came out of work that first day, I saw my wife, Gabby, laughing and talking with Daryl and another coworker, a woman from the office I'll call Brianna. After introducing her as my wife, we had some small talk before heading home. Looking back, I think that's where everything might have started. That week, when Gabby came to pick me up from work, I noticed she began spending time with Daryl and Brianna. I'd sometimes see them in the office, hanging out and listening to rap music on Daryl's Beats headphones, which were connected to his phone. Gabby told me she liked talking to Brianna and enjoyed hanging out with her. Since Brianna and Daryl lived close to each other and were good friends, I didn't think much of it at the time. Gabby visiting the office to talk to Brianna, and occasionally Daryl, seemed harmless. Gabby gets a lot of attention, especially on Instagram, so I've always tried to keep my insecurities in check. Even when I saw her talking to Daryl without Brianna around, I convinced myself not to jump to conclusions. If I brought up my suspicions, it would only upset Gabby, and we'd end up arguing in Spanish every day. But last Wednesday, everything changed, and my fears about Gabby possibly cheating on me hit me like a ton of bricks. That day, as I was leaving work, I said goodbye to a friend who was on the phone. He responded, and then told the person on the other end that it was me. His tone made me curious because it sounded like the person on the phone knew me. I asked who he was talking to, and he smiled, saying it was an old coworker of ours. Handing me the phone, he said the person wanted to say hi. It turned out to be Tyrell, an old coworker who'd left a while back. We caught up, and he explained he'd moved to Atlanta to work with his brother in a warehouse. He even joked about how he was making more money now. After chatting, he asked me to send him my phone number on Facebook so we could talk later. I agreed, sent him my number, and handed the phone back to my friend. Before I even made it to my car, Tyrell called me. I picked up, and he immediately asked if I was driving. When I said no, he told me not to start yet because he had something important to tell me. His tone was strange, and it made me nervous. I asked what he meant, and he insisted I couldn't tell anyone what he was about to say. Hesitantly, I agreed. He started asking me if Gabby still came to my job, and if Daryl was still talking to her. His questions sent a wave of anxiety through me. I told him yes to both, and he dropped the bombshell. I think Daryl banged your wife. Hearing those words sent chills down my spine. I asked Tyrell how he knew this, and he explained that back when he worked with us, he often saw Gabby and Daryl talking. According to him, Daryl would brag to other coworkers about how badly he wanted to sleep with Gabby. Tyrell claimed Daryl frequently made comments about her figure, especially about her butt. I asked Tyrell when he had seen Gabby and Daryl together, and he said it was usually about an hour before lunch. He mentioned that while Gabby sometimes talked to Brianna, he noticed her talking to Daryl more frequently. Tyrell explained that, initially, it seemed like harmless flirting, but things started to feel off when Gabby began visiting the office on Saturdays when Daryl's department was working overtime. This shocked me because I rarely worked overtime, so I couldn't understand why she would be there. I asked Tyrell if he was sure about this, and he insisted he was. He said that during one of her Saturday visits, Daryl's department had a lot of downtime, and Daryl would play music through his Beat speaker. Tyrell said that at some point, he heard loud Spanish music and noticed things getting inappropriate between Gabby and Daryl. Tyrell described seeing Daryl grab Gabby by the neck while she twerked for him. He said she seemed to be enjoying herself, laughing and putting on a show as if she were in some kind of contest. Tyrell added that Daryl even lifted Gabby's shirt to reveal her leggings. When I asked if Gabby tried to stop him, Tyrell said no. She just kept laughing and dancing. Tyrell emphasized that everyone in the room saw it happen. Hearing this, I felt frozen. I asked Tyrell again if he was absolutely sure, and he firmly confirmed it, saying he wasn't blind. He advised me to keep Gabby away from Daryl and Brianna altogether. I thanked him for telling me but hung up feeling humiliated. My thoughts raced as I drove home, consumed with rage and sadness. What Tyrell described happened 7 or 8 months ago, and the thought of what might have happened since then was unbearable. Had she taken things further with Daryl? When I got home, Gabby was on the phone with her mom. After some small talk, I asked her if she had seen Brianna that day, and she said yes. I followed up by asking if she had seen Daryl, too, but she said no. Her answer surprised me because, from what I'd seen, they acted like the Three Musketeers. Gabby brushed it off, saying Daryl wasn't around much, and claimed it was mostly just her and Brianna, which I knew wasn't true. Then, without another word, she walked past me into the kitchen and started texting on her phone. Her response left me feeling deeply hurt. It was obvious to me she was lying about her relationship with Daryl. I stood there, watching her prepare dinner for our kids, overwhelmed by sadness, anger, and frustration. Right now, I'm stuck. I feel a mix of rage and heartbreak, unsure of what to do. I need proof of what's really going on, but gathering it is going to be difficult since it involves people at my workplace. I can't risk my job, and Tyrell's account of the twerking incident, while troubling, isn't solid enough for legal action or divorce. Gabby could easily explain it away, and Daryl would just deny everything. I'm assuming the worst, that Gabby cheated on me, but I need evidence to confirm it. Without proof, I risk losing everything in a divorce, and her family will undoubtedly come after me. I have to tread carefully, but I'm determined to find out the truth. Things have taken a turn for the worse, and I'm increasingly convinced that my coworker may have had an affair with my wife, Gabby. To provide some background, my car needed brake repairs, so Gabby had been picking me up from work. During these visits, she befriended Brianna, who works in the front office, and Daryl, a coworker from the shipping department. Over time, Gabby began visiting my workplace on her days off to hang out with them during lunch. A couple of weeks ago, I got a devastating call from an old coworker, Tyrell. He told me that Daryl might have gotten too close to Gabby. Tyrell said he'd noticed them talking privately, and it looked like they were flirting. This often happened just before Daryl's lunch break, which Tyrell found suspicious. He also mentioned that on Saturdays, when Daryl worked overtime, Gabby would come by, which raised even more red flags. Tyrell said he initially didn't want to tell me anything, but one Saturday, he witnessed something that made him reconsider. He explained that he heard Spanish music playing in the shipping dock and decided to check it out. That's when he saw Gabby twerking for Daryl. According to Tyrell, things quickly got more physical. Daryl grabbed her by the neck and lifted her shirt to expose her butt. Tyrell said it started as playful, but the way they looked at each other showed it was becoming something more serious. I tried to deny it at first, asking Tyrell if he was sure it was Gabby. He confirmed it, pointing out her distinct tattoos and hairstyle. I was stunned and humiliated. What hurt even more was that this incident happened 8 or 9 months ago. Who knows what's been going on since then? While I appreciate Tyrell finally telling me, I can't help but feel it's too late. If he'd told me sooner, I might have been able to address this before things escalated. When I got home, I asked Gabby about her relationship with Daryl. She downplayed it, saying she only occasionally talked to him and mostly hung out with Brianna. I knew she was lying, especially after everything Tyrell told me, and it became clear she was using Brianna as a cover to see Daryl. Since that conversation, I've started paying more attention to Gabby's behavior. She's always on her phone, which has a passcode I can't figure out. Late at night, she goes out on the back porch to take calls, and I've started eavesdropping. The snippets of conversation I've overheard make it seem like she's talking to Daryl. She said things like, "Stop, you're crazy," or mentioned fun they had at a club. Once, I even heard her say, "I can't go over there," which made me think she was referring to his house. When I confronted her about who she was talking to, she claimed it was her sister or Brianna, but her giggling and whispering told a different story. Since Tyrell's call, the red flags have been glaringly obvious. Gabby barely talks to me anymore, always claims to be busy, and has refused to be intimate. When I tried to initiate, she laughed it off, saying she didn't want it with the kids in the house. The last straw came last Saturday. After work, Gabby called to tell me she had plans to go out again and that I'd need to cook dinner for the kids. It felt like she was angry at me for unknowingly disrupting her plans, likely involving Daryl. Looking back, I can't believe I ever thought this was normal. All the signs are pointing to infidelity, but I need undeniable proof before taking any action. This is eating me alive, and I don't know how much longer I can endure this situation. When I saw Gabby all dressed up and heading out, I immediately suspected she was planning to meet Daryl. I lied, telling her I had errands to run before coming home, even though I knew she was already getting ready to leave. I told her to ask her sister to watch the kids, knowing full well that wasn't an option. She tried to guilt me into staying home so she could go out, but I stood my ground, saying I had the right to go out and do things too and might not be back for a while. Frustrated, she snapped, "Whatever," and hung up on me. Later that night, Gabby was clearly irritated. When I said just a couple of words to her, she blew up, accusing me of ruining her plans. I told her I didn't care, and that my errands were more important than her hanging out. She countered, saying I never mentioned errands, to which I pointed out she hadn't told me anything about her plans either. When I asked who she was planning to meet, she just brushed me off, saying to forget it. Later that evening, I noticed Gabby on the porch, talking on her phone. Judging by her irritated tone, I assumed she was complaining about me. A few days later, things escalated. After I got home from work one night, Gabby had cooked dinner and came into the bedroom to tell me it was ready. As I entered the dining room, I saw her all dressed up again, clearly preparing to leave. When I asked where she was going, she vaguely said she was going out with friends and told me I had to watch the kids. I pressed her for specifics, but she accused me of trying to control her before storming out with an attitude. That night, Gabby didn't come back until 2:30 a.m. I was furious. I had been texting her, but the only response I got was, "Please stop texting me." When she finally came in, I was playing on our son's PlayStation, still stewing over her behavior. When I confronted her, asking why she was so late, she dismissed me, saying she was out with friends. I wasn't buying it. I told her it was disrespectful to come home so late, especially without a valid explanation. She snapped back, accusing me of being controlling, and said I never had an issue with her staying out late before. Our argument got loud enough that our son came out, worried about what was going on. Gabby used that as an excuse to end the argument and stormed into the bedroom. I let our son play the game for a little while before sending him back to bed, but I couldn't let the issue rest. After calming down, I went to the bedroom to continue the conversation. When I walked in, I stopped mid-sentence. Gabby was getting undressed, and I couldn't help but notice she was wearing a black string as underwear, something she never wore for me. It felt like a slap in the face. She froze when she saw me, her expression shifting between surprise and defiance, as if daring me to ask her about it. Without a word, she grabbed her pajamas off the bed and went into the bathroom to change, leaving me standing there, feeling humiliated and betrayed. I couldn't believe what I had just seen. It stopped me in my tracks and left me crushed. I decided I'd be sleeping on the couch because things would be way too awkward after that. My mind was racing, unable to process what I just witnessed. Gabby had never worn anything like that before, practically her bare bottom with just a black string. To be fair, she does own sexy underwear, but it's been ages since she wore them. When we go on vacation, she likes wearing bikinis to post on Instagram, but even those weren't as revealing as what I saw. The string she was wearing was more like something you'd see on World Star. At this point, her behavior was screaming suspicious and secretive. After reading advice online, I decided to act. I ordered a voice-activated recorder and planned to place it in her car. To avoid her seeing the package and asking questions, I had it delivered to a friend's address. Thankfully, he agreed without hesitation. Once it arrives, I'll pick it up and get to the bottom of all this. I'm ready to blow this thing wide open, no matter the cost. Thanks to Tyrell, my suspicions are now centered on the money. Today, my wife forced my hand. For context, Gabby broke her vows, and here's how it all started. Last year, my car broke down, and Gabby had to pick me up from work. While waiting, she became friends with two coworkers, Brianna, who works in the office, and Daryl. They'd chat and listen to rap music while waiting for my shift to end. Even after my car was fixed, Gabby started coming by on her lunch breaks when she wasn't working with her sister. Recently, an old friend and former coworker, Tyrell, called me with shocking news. He told me that Gabby and Daryl had been meeting up secretly and acting inappropriately. He said Gabby would visit Daryl on Saturdays when they worked overtime. Tyrell described how he once saw her twerking for Daryl in the back while music played. Daryl even lifted her shirt to see her butt and grabbed her by the neck. Tyrell suspected they might have gone further than that. Thanks to Gabby's tattoos, her usual ponytail, and the fact that she's Spanish, Tyrell had no trouble identifying her. He also mentioned she would bring Daryl lunch and hang out with him during downtime on Saturdays. Since I never work overtime, I had no idea this was happening. When I confronted Gabby about her friendship with Daryl, she outright lied, claiming they weren't close. This infuriated me because it was a blatant lie. Everyone at work saw them hanging out during lunch. After that, I started snooping to see what I could uncover, and the red flags were everywhere. Gabby would stay out all night, claiming she was with friends. She'd talk on the phone on the back porch, giggling and saying things like, "You're crazy," or "I can't come over tonight." She'd also leave the house suddenly without saying where she was going. Everything pointed to something being seriously wrong, and I knew I had to find out the truth. When I asked Gabby who she was talking to on the phone, she would usually say it was her sister or Brianna. Being at work had started feeling awkward too, especially after Tyrell's call, because I realized how nice everyone was to me, while they knew more than I did. Tyrell's information was like a master key, opening my eyes to what was happening behind my back. Gabby and Daryl had no idea that I knew about them. My only regret was that this information was 8 months old, and so much had likely happened since then. I had been so focused on work and raising our kids that I failed to notice the changes in Gabby. Tyrell showed me how blind I'd been, wearing rose-tinted glasses while Gabby used her friendship with Brianna as a front to see Daryl. Over the last 8 months, Gabby had become much more secretive. She barely talked to me, only speaking when absolutely necessary, and most of her conversations were with her friends. She started dressing up more often, and after staying out until 2 in the morning one night, I noticed she was wearing a black string thong. It concerned me because she never wore underwear like that. She usually reserved sexy bikinis for Instagram posts during vacations, but this was something different. This was meant for someone else. Seeing her like that froze me in my tracks. I couldn't even argue. I just walked out of the room. Tyrell's revelations had turned my world upside down, and the writing was clearly on the wall. Before his call, I had always tried not to be the jealous type. Gabby is beautiful, and she gets plenty of attention on Instagram. Her photos, even old ones, get likes and comments, many of which are inappropriate. It wasn't easy being a husband to someone with thousands of guys following her online, but I always tried to be understanding. I thought once we got married, this sort of thing would change. I decided to buy a voice-activated recorder to get proof of what was going on. If my suspicions were true, I was prepared to divorce her. After I got the recorder, I thought I'd try to talk to Gabby to see if we could fix things. I rode with her to the supermarket to bring up the issue. I told her that while going out with friends was fine, she still had responsibilities as a parent. She accused me of being controlling and said she had the right to have fun and not spend all her time at home or working. I told her I understood she wanted to have fun, but that her sudden outings without explanation were concerning. Surprisingly, Gabby agreed to be more mindful of her responsibilities and my feelings. For a while, it seemed like we were making progress, and I thought we could work on our marriage. But a couple of days later, Daryl called her, and everything unraveled again. Earlier this week, Gabby told me the kids wanted to watch a Pixar movie with their older cousins on Saturday. She said she planned to take them to watch the movie together. I thought it was a great idea and was happy she was spending more time with the kids. However, a couple of hours after they left, my nephew called me. He mentioned he'd heard we had a particular video game he wanted to play and asked if he could come over after the movie. I told him it was fine if Gabby was willing to bring him back home. What he said next completely threw me off. He told me Gabby had dropped them off at the movie and wasn't staying to watch it with them. I was confused because Gabby had specifically told me she'd watch the movie with the kids. That's when I remembered. It was Saturday, the same day Tyrell said Gabby would meet Daryl during overtime. It was all making sense, and her lie confirmed my suspicions. Noticing the time, I realized that if anyone was working overtime on a Saturday, they'd still be there. I called my wife, Gabby, but she didn't pick up, which infuriated me. Determined to get answers, I called my job and asked for security. When I spoke to the lady there, She confirmed that the guys were still working. I hung up, now seething with anger, wondering if Gabby was actually with Daryl. I got into my car and drove to my workplace, furious and determined to get to the truth. On the way, all I could think about was the betrayal and how ridiculous this situation had become. I'd already spoken to Gabby about this before, thinking she understood how serious I was. But this time, I wasn't going to let it slide. If Daryl was sleeping with my wife, I was done. When I arrived at the parking lot, I immediately spotted Gabby's car. My anger intensified. I stormed into the building and headed straight for the shipping dock where Daryl worked. As I entered, his crew jumped up, clearly surprised to see me. They looked like they were about to leave, but my presence halted them. I scanned the area and didn't see Daryl or Gabby, which meant they were likely in the trucker's lounge. I made my way to the lounge, but one of the crew members tried to stop me, saying I didn't belong there. I warned him to back off or face the consequences, and it was clear he didn't want to challenge me. Not wasting more time, I pushed past and headed to the lounge. The trucker's lounge was a small, mostly unused room with broken vending machines. I knew I'd find them there, and as I got closer, I heard Daryl groaning. My suspicions were confirmed. Hugging the wall, I peered inside and couldn't believe what I saw. Daryl was sitting on a couch, his shirt open, pants and underwear down, while Gabby was on her knees in front of him. She was servicing him, completely engrossed. Daryl looked down at her like he owned her. It was a disgusting scene, one I never imagined I'd witness. I pulled out my phone, knowing I'd need proof. My hands shook as I recorded at least 7 seconds of their betrayal. Then, I burst into the room, screaming, "Screw you, bitch." Daryl looked stunned, but Gabby's reaction shocked me more. She didn't even seem embarrassed. Instead, she looked annoyed, as if I was inconveniencing her. Still holding Daryl, she glared at me and snapped, "What are you doing here?" Her casual attitude infuriated me. I yelled, "Screw you, bitch. This is how you treat me." Gabby sighed, covering her face, muttering, "Oh my God." She wasn't ashamed of what she was doing, just embarrassed about my reaction. I called her every name I could think of, my rage boiling over, but all she did was roll her eyes and say, "Can you please just leave?" Her indifference, as if our marriage didn't matter, cut deeper than anything. She didn't care that she'd been caught, didn't care that she was destroying our family. All she wanted was for me to leave, so she could continue whatever it was with Daryl. Her complete disregard for me, for our marriage, left me stunned and even angrier. I couldn't believe this was the woman I married, the mother of my children. All I could do was yell, "How could you do this to me?" After claiming she loved me, Gabby finally blurted out, "I don't love you like that, okay?" Hearing those words almost knocked the wind out of me. She told me again, in a frustrated tone, to just leave. I told her I wanted a divorce, and her only response was a flat, "Okay." That was it. No apology, no regret, just indifference. I left the warehouse, got in my car, and drove home, absolutely furious. Once I got home, I couldn't contain my rage. I punched the walls and cursed at the top of my lungs. How could she do this to me? How could the woman I thought I knew become someone so unrecognizable? I realized I was completely done with the toxic situation she had dragged me into. As of now, she still hasn't come back, and I assume she's staying with her sister. She'll have to explain the situation to her family, but at this point, I don't care. Whatever comes next, I have undeniable evidence of her infidelity, and I plan to use it to my advantage during the divorce. It's clear now that Gabby was never in love with me. She loved the lifestyle and the things I did for her. Looking back, the signs were there. I just didn't want to see them. Gabby didn't want a real partnership. She wanted to be desired, and when Daryl came along, showing her that attention, she betrayed everything we had. Relationships like that never last, because people like Gabby eventually reveal who they really are. To prepare myself for what was ahead, I bought a voice-activated recorder, though I only needed to use it once. That's all it took to confirm what Tyrell had warned me about. All I had to do was wait for the right opportunity to uncover the truth. That opportunity came last Saturday when Gabby claimed she was going to watch a Pixar movie with our kids and their older cousins. Initially, I believed her, but then my nephew, who was at the movies, called to let me know that Gabby planned to pick them up afterward. That caught me off guard because she had specifically said she would be watching the movie with them. After hanging up, it didn't take long to piece things together. Tyrell had previously mentioned that Gabby often visited Daryl at work during overtime shifts, the same shifts where she had been seen twerking for him months ago. Deciding to confirm my suspicions, I drove to her workplace. When I arrived, her car was in the parking lot, confirming my fears. I headed into the building, making my way toward the small trucker's lounge where I suspected they might be. Peeking inside, I saw Gabby on all fours, with Daryl holding her head in his lap. It was a painful and infuriating moment, but I knew I needed evidence. I took out my phone, recorded about 7 seconds of the scene, and then stormed in to confront them. I unleashed a level of anger I didn't know I was capable of. It hurt even more when Gabby seemed more annoyed than remorseful about being caught. Daryl looked shocked, but Gabby had the nerve to ask me to leave. That sent me over the edge. I demanded to know how she could do something like this, and she coldly responded, "I don't love you like that," before telling me to leave again. Hearing that almost made me faint. I left in a haze of rage and heartbreak, driving back home while trying to process everything. After venting my anger at the situation, I eventually calmed down and faced the harsh truth. Our marriage was over. Gabby didn't love me, not as a partner or a husband. Looking back, I realized who Gabby really was. She wanted to feel entitled in the relationship, and I unknowingly enabled that by trying to keep her happy at any cost. She had convinced me that being a good husband meant catering to her every need. I thought I was lucky to have her because she presented herself as a trophy wife, always seeking attention and validation from others. Her obsession with social media only made things worse. With countless followers, mostly men, and flirtatious comments on her posts, I had to develop thick skin just to cope. Whether it was bikini pictures from our trips to Vegas or Jamaica or her everyday selfies, she craved attention. It didn't matter that I was devoted to her. She would always chase the next source of validation. Now that it's over, I've accepted the reality of who she is and that our marriage was doomed from the start. I knew it was time to tell my family everything. The first person I called was my older brother Ricky. When he answered, I let it all out, ranting about what had happened, laced with as many curse words as I could remember. After I told my brother I was at home, he said he had to run a quick errand but would stop by afterward. I then called my younger sister to break the news to her. She gave me a lecture, but she also mentioned that Ricky had called her and was already aware of the situation. She said she would check on me later and hung up. Not long after, she called back to tell me that Ricky was coming to pick me up and suggested I go with him. She asked where the kids were, and I told her they were at the movies with Gabby, supposed to pick them up afterward. She wasn't thrilled about the kids being with her, but in my state of mind, I figured there wasn't much we could do at that moment. After hanging up, I started to drift off to sleep, only to hear Ricky's car pull up. When I opened the door, I saw Ricky walking toward me, carrying a bag in his toolbox. Ricky's presence was always intimidating. He had played football in high school and college, and with his bald head and beard, he looked like he came straight from the military. He walked up to me, gave me a big hug, and even though we always played it tough with our feelings, I couldn't help but tear up. We both knew this was what I needed. After the hug, he told me he stopped at the store and bought new locks for the house. He said the last thing I needed was to leave and have Gabby come back to take everything. After about an hour of talking and changing the locks, we headed to Ricky's house. He and his girlfriend did everything they could to cheer me up over the weekend. My sister Gina also came over to offer support. Even with my family's encouragement, I couldn't shake the images of what I had witnessed. I kept hoping Gabby would confess, but after what I saw, I couldn't stop thinking about revenge. Payback was burning inside me, and I wasn't finished with this yet. Then, on Sunday, Gabby's sister, Christina, called me. At first, Ricky didn't want me to answer, but I reminded him that my kids were with her, so I took the call. Christina asked what was going on, saying Gabby wouldn't come back to the house but wouldn't say why. I told her the truth. I had caught Gabby cheating at my job. There was a moment of silence before she started denying it, claiming I was lying about her sister. After letting her rant for a bit, I told her to hang up and that I would send her the proof. She tried to say something, but I angrily ended the call. I immediately sent her the video and didn't hear from her the rest of the day. The next day, Monday, I went to work and spoke with my supervisor about Daryl and Gabby. To my surprise, he gave me a testimony form to file a formal complaint. While I was filling it out, he expressed his sympathy and asked if I was sure about what was happening. I angrily replied that I was sure and even asked if he wanted to see the video I had. He was taken aback and asked if I truly had evidence. When I confirmed that I did, he took the form back from me, saying it wasn't needed anymore. He then picked up the phone and called someone to report the situation. After hanging up, he told me that he had contacted the manager and asked me to send the video to his email so he could handle it from there. When the boss was scheduled to visit the facility in a couple of days, I told him I wouldn't be coming into work during that time, and he said he was just about to suggest that anyway. Then, Gabby's sister Christina finally called me back, and I was surprised when she said she had spoken with Gabby. Christina wanted me to talk to Gabby that night because the kids wanted to come home, I told her I'd take the kids, but I didn't want to talk to Gabby because there was nothing left to say. Christina said she knew Gabby had messed up, but insisted that I should be the reasonable one and think about the family. I felt like I was being unreasonable, but I stuck to my stance. I told Christina I wasn't going to talk to Gabby because she had cheated with my coworker and embarrassed me at work. I also mentioned that Gabby had brought another man into my house, and I was supposed to just forget everything that happened. Christina argued that it wasn't true, and that Gabby only messed around with him at the job or his place. I scoffed and said, "How do I know that? For all I know, she could have slept with Daryl's crew too when she was there." Christina got mad and denied that, and I demanded to know what really happened. That's when Christina told me everything Gabby had confided in her, and honestly, I regretted asking because I knew Gabby wouldn't lie to Christina, which made it even worse. According to Christina, when Gabby first met Brianna, Daryl was talking to her, and Gabby told him she was there to pick me up. While they waited, Daryl and Brianna started talking, and whenever Gabby came in, they'd hang out while waiting for me to come out. Over time, Gabby and Brianna became friends, and Gabby liked spending time with them during lunch. Christina said that after a while, Daryl began complimenting Gabby, especially about her body, which surprised her, but she liked the attention. One day, she messed up and told Brianna she found Daryl attractive, and Brianna ended up telling him what Gabby had said. From then on, Daryl got too close and started making inappropriate comments. Gabby played it off, but she admitted to Christina that she liked the attention and kept thinking about it. I scoffed again, asking why Gabby didn't just tell me about it so I could put a stop to it. Christina said she didn't want it because she really liked Daryl and how wild he was acting. I asked her when all of this started, and Christina hesitated at first, but when I threatened to hang up, she told me. She said Gabby told her about a birthday party Brianna's sister was having. I knew about Brianna's sister and how she always found excuses to get drunk. Gabby went to the party with Brianna, and according to Christina, Daryl was there too. Gabby was surprised to see him, but they ended up hanging out and having fun. Christina asked Gabby if Daryl was trying to get with her, and Gabby confirmed that he was. She said Daryl started dancing with her, but eventually, things became more aggressive between them. When I asked what she meant by aggressive, Christina said Daryl had asked Gabby to twerk for him. Christina said Gabby turned around and started twerking on Daryl. She mentioned that in the tight leggings Gabby was wearing, it was obvious Daryl was enjoying the way she was grinding on him. After a while, Daryl started kissing her, and they ended up making out. Christina said that after that, they would go out together, and things started to escalate. When I asked what she meant by escalating, the red flags really began to add up. Christina explained that when Gabby went to hang out at Daryl's apartment with Brianna, Daryl couldn't keep his hands off her, and Gabby allowed it. Brianna, seeing what was happening, left them alone in the apartment. Christina said that after they made out, Daryl went down on Gabby. After that, he kept trying to do the same thing, and sometimes Gabby would stop him, but eventually, she didn't. Christina said that at one point, Gabby started returning the favor. I asked Christina if Gabby did that while my kids were around, and she assured me it all happened either at the job or at Daryl's apartment. I couldn't believe what I was hearing, and Christina expressed her disbelief too. She said that Gabby admitted Daryl knew exactly what to do and that she loved how wild he was. Gabby thought going down on her would be the extent of it, but Daryl wanted more. Christina said that one day, Daryl turned her around and pinned her against the couch. She told Gabby she should have run at that point, but Gabby couldn't bring herself to do it. She allowed the situation to go further, and Daryl took her from behind. I was stunned, and I had to ask how Gabby could do this to me. Christina said Gabby found the whole situation exciting, and the fact that it was wrong made it even more thrilling. She also said Gabby liked how rebellious Daryl was, and when he finally got her, he didn't disappoint. Christina mentioned that Daryl was so eager that Gabby thought the neighbors might have heard them. I could relate to that because when my brother and I helped our aunt move out of her apartment, we heard what sounded like explosions and machine gun fire coming from the apartment below us. We later realized someone was watching an action movie, and the walls were so thin it was like we were living in an action film. If Daryl's apartment was anything like that, I could easily imagine the neighbors hearing everything if Daryl was being as aggressive as Christina described. Christina said that from then on, whenever Daryl wanted it, he got it until Tyrell found out. It was supposed to be their secret, but Tyrell turned out to be more of a man than they thought. Christina was about to continue, but I told her that the party and apartment situation was enough. She asked if I was going to be the reasonable one again and talk to Gabby, but I told her no. I said I was going to come over the next day to get the kids, but I had nothing to say to Gabby. Christina insisted that if we both acted stubborn, it wouldn't work, but I told her Gabby made a fool of me, and I would never give her that chance again. I told Christina when I'd be coming to pick up the kids, and she groaned before hanging up in frustration. I felt pretty low after that, and it took me a while to regain my composure. A few hours later, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize, followed by a text. It turned out to be a coworker I knew, and I was surprised to hear from him. I was driving at the time, so I answered via Bluetooth. He asked what was going on, and I told him I was just running errands. He then asked if I had anything to do with Daryl getting fired, which took me completely by surprise. He explained that 2 men and a woman in suits had arrived with her supervisor, and they went straight to the back where the trucker's lounge was. From this, I figured they must have been checking the lounge for video footage. About 20 minutes later, Daryl was called to the office and told to pack up his things. I admitted to my involvement, and he said he would have done the same thing. He asked when I was coming back, and I told him I'd work a half day on Friday. He said okay, and we ended the call. I was relieved and decided to treat myself to a nice dinner that night. The next day was when I had to pick up the kids, and I dreaded it. It had been days since I'd seen Gabby, and my brother Ricky came with me for support. When I got there, the kids were excited to see me and immediately told me their mother had been mean to them and ignoring them, so they were ready to come home. I saw Gabby in the kitchen, talking on her phone and completely ignoring me. I told the kids to go ahead and get in the car, and my oldest daughter asked if she could bring her iPad with her. Gabby snapped and said no, insisting it had to stay with her. I told her it was fine and I'd take responsibility for it, but Gabby refused. She said she bought it, so it stayed with her until they came back. My daughter was getting upset, so I told her to wait in the car. As she walked out, I couldn't believe Gabby was being so petty. That's when a huge argument broke out. I didn't hold back this time. I called her a hoe, and she shot back, calling me a snitch for getting Daryl fired. She said she didn't know Daryl like that, and I told her she could have said no. She responded with a "screw you, go cry to my mama," and said I was lucky she didn't look my way. She told me I should have fought Daryl instead of getting him fired. I said that real women don't get that luxury, and I wasn't going to fight over a thoughtless woman. Then, she called me dusty and lame, saying she didn't love a lame guy. I got so angry I grabbed a glass of orange juice and threw it at her. She barely dodged it, looking at me in shock, and then threw a fork at my head, though she missed. The fight escalated until my brother, Christina, and Christina's friend intervened. Gabby yelled that she didn't need me and kept shouting next. My brother practically had to pick me up and pull me onto the porch to calm me down. After I cooled off, I left because I was exhausted and didn't have the energy to fight anymore. Once I got back in the car, I told my daughter that her mother had taken the iPad, but she didn't care anymore. She just wanted to leave. I couldn't believe everything I had just gone through. Even though I had overreacted, it felt good to finally curse Gabby out. Right now, my kids are with me, and with the new locks on the door, it's going to stay that way. I had to break the news to the kids in a way they could understand that their mother and I won't be living together anymore. They were crushed but understood. As I've said before, the only thing on my mind now is the divorce and getting the lawyers involved. The video could play a big role in helping with the arguments, and I'm hoping it will make a difference. My wife is clearly full of herself, and if she thinks she's going to have some meaningful relationship with Daryl, she's delusional. Daryl, or anyone else for that matter, won't stick around for her. She's approaching 40, with kids, and Daryl isn't interested in being the world's greatest stepdad, despite what she might think. I know Daryl better than she does. He's just using her for a fling. Once he's done, he'll move on to the next one, and that reality will hit her sooner than she thinks. I bet it won't even take a year. At least now I have some peace of mind, but I still have to worry about my kids and my real family. Maybe even Christina, if she ever sees through Gabby's nonsense. After everything that happened, it feels like I've finally gotten my life back on track. The divorce is finalized, and though it was a rough road, I can finally breathe again. My kids are with me now, and we've created a new rhythm to our lives, one that's filled with laughter, love, and peace. The house feels like a home again, and I no longer feel that constant weight of uncertainty hanging over me. It was hard breaking the news to my kids, but they understood. They were crushed at first, but I could see in their eyes that they trusted me, and that meant everything. They needed stability, and I promised to be the father they deserved. That became my focus, just being there for them, showing them that no matter what happened with Gabby or anyone else, I'd always be their rock. It took time, but I've started to find myself again. The pain of betrayal has lessened, and in its place, a stronger version of me has emerged. I've surrounded myself with real people. Ricky, my brother, who's been by my side through it all, and even Christina, who had the courage to distance herself from Gabby. She's apologized, and though I didn't expect that, it showed me that not everyone I cared about was lost in the mess. I can't lie, There were days when I wondered if I'd ever find peace. But now, as I watch my kids play in the yard, hear them laughing over dinner, or see them excited about the smallest things, I know I made the right choice. Life might not have gone the way I planned, but it's turned into something better. I've also realized that I'm ready to let love in again. But this time, it's different. I'm not rushing anything, and I'm not settling for less than I deserve. I met someone recently. She's kind, patient, and just gets me. We enjoy simple moments together, whether it's a quiet evening at home or a walk through the park. It feels right, and I'm not in a rush. She doesn't bring drama into my life. She just brings peace, and I can feel my heart slowly opening up to that. I know I've been through a lot, and I'm not naive enough to think it's all smooth sailing from here. But what I've learned is that I'm stronger than I ever gave myself credit for. The past doesn't define me. It's just a part of my story. And right now, I'm writing the next chapter, one filled with love, laughter, and the promise of better days ahead. I've found peace, not only in my home but in myself. And with my kids by my side, I know that the best is yet to come. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
My wife Audrey has been incredible to me. She's tall, slender, with brown blonde hair, and a perfect figure. When we first met, her eyes lit up like a child on Christmas morning. I'm 6'2" and was on the swim team in school, so I have a swimmer's body. Our friends always joked that our constant smiles gave away our feelings for each other. The lovemaking was amazing. For the first 2 years, we met just for that. Everything changed when Audrey made a mistake with Brad, a 6 and 10 inches basketball player. I got bombarded with messages and pictures of her and Brad from a party, where they ended up kissing and disappearing into his room. The next day, I confronted her and she admitted everything. She had gotten drunk and made a stupid mistake, insisting she loved only me and was sorry. Most of our friends said it was a one-time thing and that I should forgive her. After 2 weeks of anger, I did, but I warned her it was her only chance. Looking back, those who told me to forgive her ended up in bad relationships, while those who said to leave her are happily married. I became a programmer, and Audrey got a job as an administrator. We married and had 2 kids, Matt and Marcy. Life was good until Audrey started working in real estate, leading to long hours and less closeness. Remembering her past mistake, I installed monitoring software on her phone and a recorder in her bag. Soon, I discovered she was having lovemaking with a guy named David. Heartbroken, I clung to the fact that their conversations lacked affection. I tried to win her back by cooking her favorite meal, dressing the kids nicely, and showing her more attention. She seemed receptive, and I felt hopeful. I sent her pictures of the kids and expressed my love whenever I saw her messaging David. I was thrilled when she told David she couldn't meet him. On Friday night, I asked my brother and his wife to babysit the kids and took Audrey to a 5-star restaurant for dinner and dancing. That night, we tried to break our record for the most lovemaking in one evening. We didn't, but it was fun trying. The next day, we picked up the kids and spent the whole day at the water park. Life felt good, and I thought things were working out. However, Audrey's text to David on Wednesday morning shattered my heart. "Looking forward to seeing you. I missed you." I realized she was a liar and everything I believed about her was false. I decided not to listen to her excuses or let her deceive me anymore. Audrey had betrayed me and the children, even if she hadn't formally ended things with us. I saw David's face when I activated the camera on Audrey's phone using the monitoring program. He was a colleague of hers whom I had met at her office. Realizing violence wasn't worth it, I decided to remove Audrey from our lives, exploit her double life, and seek primary custody of the children. I would show everyone how she chose her lover over us. The following week, there was a concert by Marcy's group. I moved a reminder on Audrey's phone calendar to the day after the event. When I confirmed she was at her lover's apartment during the concert, I left her a message and pretended she had missed it. Marcy was upset, but I reassured her that adults sometimes get busy with work. Audrey's late arrivals were becoming the norm. When we got home, she smelled freshly showered, despite still being in work clothes. She tried to make amends with Marcy, who eventually forgave her, but insisted she couldn't miss the next concert. I wondered if Audrey was genuinely remorseful, or just afraid of being exposed. I noticed Audrey and her lover meeting at a small restaurant known for its Scotch eggs. I mentioned this to my father-in-law and made a reservation for Wednesday, the day they usually went there. Ensuring Audrey was still in the office, I headed to the restaurant with my in-laws. We arrived a few minutes after her, and I saw Audrey sitting in the back with her lover. "Do you want to sit in a booth or at a table?" I asked loudly. Audrey's head shot up, eyes wide, and she quickly moved away from her lover. He looked puzzled until he saw us and tried to shrink in his seat. As we were seated, Audrey rushed over. "Mom and Dad, what are you doing here?" "We heard about the amazing Scotch eggs and decided to try them." Dad smiled, happy to see Audrey. He leaned in for a hug. "Audrey, they're really great. Why don't you join us?" "My colleague and I are sitting right there." Audrey pointed to a booth where her lover was waving, his face red. The smiles on my in-laws' faces disappeared. "We wouldn't want to disturb your business lunch," my mother-in-law said, staring at the lover. "No problem," Audrey said enthusiastically. "We're just grabbing a quick bite before heading out to show a property." It was a tense lunch. After the lover shook hands with everyone, Audrey did most of the talking. My mother-in-law frowned at her food, and my father-in-law stared at the lover without saying a word. I asked simple questions like, "How long have you worked here?" And "How is a nice guy like you still single?" My favorite was, "Audrey, you should introduce your sister to him. If it works out, we could be related." Audrey's smile was tense. The lover finally said, "No thanks, I have a girlfriend." "Oh, is it someone we know or a secret?" I asked. "She's in a bad relationship and trying to get out of it." "I don't feel comfortable telling you who it is," he said with a grin. The smirk vanished when he realized everyone was staring at him, especially Audrey. When the food arrived, my in-laws ate quickly. I only took a few bites of my Scotch egg. Audrey noticed and asked, "Is the Scotch egg delicious?" "I've lost my appetite," I replied, staring at her. Audrey's mother waved to the waiter and gave him a $100 bill to pay for everyone. She jumped up, saying she needed to go to the restroom. The waiter returned, and Audrey's father took the change, stared at the lover like he was something smelly, and went to the restroom. Without saying a word, I said to Audrey and her lover, "Sorry to interrupt your business lunch. I'm sure you have plans to discuss and people to deceive." I got up to leave the restaurant. Audrey chased me to my car. "It was nice to see you at lunch. We'll discuss this at home. Your parents will be here in a second." By then, I saw Audrey's parents almost running to the front door, not looking at the lover. Audrey, seeing where I was looking, lowered her gaze and said, "It's probably better this way." My parents came out, hugged Audrey briefly, and got into my car. I walked away from Audrey without saying a word. Neither of us spoke the whole way home. When I dropped my in-laws off, I said goodbye. As usual, Mom hugged me tightly and told me she loved me like the son she never had. Dad hugged me and told me to bring the kids. He missed us all. It saddened me to realize that Audrey was worth lying to her parents. Audrey's parents had already disowned Karen, their younger daughter, due to her infidelity. They immediately interrupted Audrey whenever she mentioned Karen. One Sunday, Karen tried to sneak into her son-in-law's church during a sermon. Her father interrupted the pastor to apologize for having to leave and walked out without acknowledging Karen. Audrey returned home that evening with a story about how a dinner meeting with her lover secured a big deal for both of them. "It's inappropriate to go to dinner alone with an unmarried man. I don't want you near him anymore, and I definitely don't want you to go out to dinner with him again," I told her. "Honey, I'm sorry. If it bothers you, I won't go to lunch with him anymore. Don't worry about him. We made a great deal," Audrey said. I told Audrey I would sleep in the guest room until she properly apologized to me and her parents. "Remember when your sister got caught cheating?" Audrey was clearly alarmed. "You're making a mountain out of a molehill," she said. On the plus side, I now had an excuse not to have lovemaking with her. Then I installed a switch in her car and her lover's car while they were at his apartment. I also sabotaged the transmission sensor to keep mechanics guessing. One day, while I was at Matt's football game, Audrey decided to spend time with her lover. I remotely turned off Audrey's car. "Knock, knock," her lover said. "What happened? Came back so quickly?" she asked. "My car won't start. Let's wait 15 minutes, he replied. "The battery is charged, the headlights work, but it just won't start," she said. "Do you want me to give you a ride home?" he asked. "No, you idiot. If my husband sees you dropping me off, it will be a big problem," Audrey said. "Call a tow truck. I need to pick up Marcy for her band competition." "Why not let her husband drive her?" he asked. "He's with Matt at his football game. You can take my car," she replied. "Debacle at the restaurant?" he asked. "Oh, yes. Okay, take me to the rental car and I'll call a tow truck for my car," she said. "Meet the tow truck driver and pay him $50 to give the address of our business where the car was found." Audrey's phone rang. "Damn. Hello? Have you picked up Marcy yet?" "I'm having car trouble. I think it's the battery, she said. Do you want me to come to your office and help? I asked. No, I already called a tow truck and will rent a car nearby so Marcy won't be late, she replied. Okay, call if you need help, I said, and hung up. Audrey's lover dropped her at the rental car place, but she was late picking up Marcy. Luckily, Marcy called me and I asked a friend to take Matt home. I picked up Marcy for her competition just in time. When Marcy and I got home, Matt was already in his room and Audrey was waiting, still in work clothes but smelling like she just showered. Marcy, I'm so sorry I had car trouble and couldn't pick you up. I rented a car, but by then Daddy had already picked you up, Audrey said. It's okay, Mom. I just made it to the competition thanks to Dad. This is the second time you've missed my performances. I hope the work is worth it, Marcy said before going to her room. I confronted Audrey. I called your work after lunch and they said you left. You had over 2 hours to pick up Marcy. What happened? Audrey froze for a few seconds and then said, I was doing some things and thought I had enough time. I didn't expect the car to break down. What business were you doing? You never mentioned it, I asked. Just some things that needed to be done, she replied. Well, I hope those things were more important than your daughter's love because you're on thin ice, I said, then went to sleep in the guest room. It was clear Audrey didn't care about missing our kids' activities. She prioritized her lover over us. The mechanics couldn't find any problems with Audrey's car. Marcy started pushing Audrey's buttons. Mom, you said you were taking me and my friends to the mall this Saturday. Can you tell me now if you don't want to drive us? We don't want to be stuck there if your car breaks down again. Matt heard this and laughed. Nice joke, Marcy. The kids felt unappreciated by their mother. Audrey complained to me, asking me to talk to the children about respecting her. I'll think about it while I wait for your apology in the guest room, I said. She blamed my isolation on my stubbornness. On Saturday, I took Marcy and her friends to the mall. Audrey said she had work to do. Her car was parked at a house for sale. Who was with her when we got home? Marcy thanked me loudly in front of her mother, emphasizing her appreciation. She then called her friend and ignored Audrey's questions. Audrey looked like she wanted to complain, but I started giggling, took my drink, and locked myself in my office. Audrey, still in work clothes, smelled like she had just showered. She likely had lovemaking in a house she was selling. I hope she at least changed the sheets. Matt's birthday was coming up, so we rented 6 lanes at a bowling alley for friends and family. Finding a place without a Wednesday night league took some effort, but I managed. When I told Audrey, she looked uneasy. I said I'd take the kids and their friends while she picked up the cake and candles. We'd eat pizza, open presents, and bowl. The week before, I sabotaged her lover's car 3 times to prevent their meetings. They rescheduled for Tuesday, so I broke his car again. After it was fixed, I saw Audrey's text on Wednesday. Looking forward to seeing you a little later in the afternoon. Her GPS showed her heading to his apartment. She had time to have fun, get the cake, and come to the party. I rented a car with a big trunk for a special plan. Confirming Audrey was at her lover's apartment, I placed a covered cage at the front door. I used a door ram to smash the door, then activated a taser on the metal cage, releasing an angry skunk into the apartment. I quickly left. Listening through Audrey's phone, I heard screams and her lover telling her to call the police. I blocked her phone. The lover finally called the police, saying a wild animal was in his apartment. The police arrived, guns drawn. The skunk attacked, causing them to scream and vomit before closing the door. It took hours for animal control to capture the skunk. Afterward, 2 smelly police officers questioned Audrey and her lover. 2 more officers arrived, but quickly left due to the smell. Who's the owner here? An officer asked. I am, the lover replied. Who are you? The officer asked Audrey. Just visiting, she replied. Do you have ID? The officer asked. Is this really necessary? I just got attacked by a skunk, Audrey said, showing her ID. How do you know him? The officer asked. We work together, Audrey replied. What were you doing here? The officer asked. Picking up documents, Audrey said. After confirming their identities, the officer asked, Why was there a skunk in the apartment? It was a birthday present, the lover started, but Audrey interrupted. Did you buy an adult skunk for your boyfriend? The officer asked. He's not my boyfriend, Audrey said. Stop lying. Why did you buy an adult skunk as a present? The officer pressed. I didn't. I bought a young skunk. He told me he loved skunks, so I surprised him. But it turned out to be an adult, and it attacked him, Audrey said. The skunk must have been expensive, the officer said. Not too much, Audrey said. Do you buy expensive pets for all your coworkers or just your boyfriend? the officer asked. Audrey didn't answer. What about the broken door? The officer asked. I broke it yesterday and didn't have time to fix it, the lover said. The officer must have stared at them for a minute before saying, I know this is all a lie, but I can't stand this smell anymore. You and your boyfriend can leave because you both smell worse than us. I'm not contaminating my car with that stench. With that, they left, slamming the broken door loudly. What the hell was that? The lover asked. Audrey, always sharp, replied, We couldn't tell them someone broke down your door and released a skunk in your apartment. Why not? He asked. Because then they would ask my husband if he did it. He already knows. If not, they would tell him I was here, Audrey said sweetly. Be honest, how many other women do you see? No one, the lover replied indignantly. When was the last time you slept with another woman besides me? Audrey asked. About a month ago, he muttered. You've been sleeping with her this whole time, Audrey asked. There was another one 6 months ago, he said quietly. Did their husbands find out? Audrey asked. Why do you think they were married? He asked. Because I know what turns you on. Now answer, Audrey said. Yes, both, he replied. Did they know it was you? Audrey asked. Not sure, he replied. Great. Now I'm sure lying to the police was the right choice. This is likely revenge from one of their husbands. I'll find out if my husband did it, Audrey said. Audrey's phone rang. Hey, Audrey, have you picked up the cake yet? I asked. Damn, I'm stuck at work. Leaving now, she replied. Don't let Matt down, I said. I'm on my way, she replied, and hung up. Audrey showered, dressed, and left. I stopped her car halfway to the store. After the fourth attempt, it started. It broke down 3 more times, but she finally made it. She arrived late at the bowling alley. When Audrey walked in with the cake, we all covered our noses and coughed. Matt asked his mom to just go home after the party. On the way home, Matt asked, Why does Mom always miss our events? She tries to do what's best for the family, but sometimes it's hard to be in 2 places at once, I replied. But you're always there for us and make more money, Matt said. I have a more flexible schedule, so it's easier for me to be with my favorite skunks, I said. It's not funny, Dad, Marcy said. It'll be funny when you tell your friends at school tomorrow, I replied. We had to throw away the smelly cake, which the kids found funny. I was glad to sleep in the guest room that night. A few days later, I saw Audrey sniffing the upholstery in my car. She looked like a mouse searching for cheese. I followed her upstairs and recorded her sniffing my shoes. I never asked why her car didn't smell like a skunk. 2 Saturdays later, I told everyone I needed to go to the hardware store. No one wanted to come, so I went alone to the lover's apartment. His car was there. I knocked on his door. How can I help? He asked. Actually, I think we can help each other. I'm Audrey's husband. Can I come in? I asked. His face paled as I pushed past him and sat at the kitchen table. I invited him to sit with me. The place smelled like fresh paint and skunk, with all new furniture. I know you've been with my wife Audrey for over 6 months, I said. Hey man, we're just friends, he replied. Would it help if I showed you photos and videos of your get-togethers? I asked. I don't know what you're talking about, he replied. No nonsense. I know you're sleeping with my wife and I have proof. I don't care about you. I care about what my wife does. So instead of hiring a detective to get dirt on her, I offer to pay you for it, I said. You want me to make a video of me having lovemaking with your wife? That'll cost $2,000, he said. He stared at me for a minute, considering the offer. $2,000 for a video of me with your wife? Are you serious? He asked. Yes, I'm serious. $2,000 for a video showing her face and body during lovemaking. I also need written consent from you that you took the video and allowed me to use it, I replied. If you have so much evidence, why do you need a video? He asked. I need more leverage for the divorce, I said. That would be really cruel, he said. Like how she betrays me and her children? I asked. He paused, then whispered, yes, like that. $2,000, and I won't tell the other husbands about their wives. I'll even pay for a spa day for you and Audrey at a hotel, I offered. He looked at me carefully. Make it $3,000 and we have a deal, he said. Great, don't tell Audrey. I'll arrange and pay for the spa and hotel. The Monday after, I'll call to set up a time to get the video and pay you in cash. All clear? Yes, he replied. Make sure her face is visible in the footage. I'll send the consent form today and call you Monday, I said, then left and continued my shopping. On Wednesday evening, I told Audrey, I have a conference this Saturday. Is that a problem? No, it looks like it will be a relaxing weekend. Have fun, she replied. On Monday night, I called her lover and picked him up. I didn't want to be recorded. I took him to a quiet rest stop, checked him for any recording devices, then let him back into the car. "Do you have what I need?" I asked. "Yes," he replied, handing me a flash drive. I checked it on my laptop. "This is exactly what I needed. Do you have the consent form?" He handed me an envelope, which I verified. I took a photo and sent it to myself. I then handed him an envelope of cash. He counted the $100 bills twice, smiling. "If you need another video, let me know. Easiest money I ever made," he said. On Tuesday, I told my brother and his wife what was going on, showing them a short video, photos, and a list of Audrey's dates, highlighting missed family events. I did the same for Audrey's parents and my parents, asking everyone to ignore Audrey until I gave the okay. On Wednesday, while Audrey was with her lover, I explained to the kids what was happening. "Mom is infatuated with another man, and I'm not sure if she still loves me," I said. They asked if we would get a divorce. I said we would discuss it with their mother. "She's at her boyfriend's house today." They both shouted, "Is she there now?" "Yes," I replied, showing them the GPS tracker on her car outside his apartment. Marcy asked, "Is this why Mom misses our events?" I showed them the dated list with missed events highlighted. I also showed a time-lapse tracker of Audrey's whereabouts on Marcy's concert and Matt's birthday. They cried when they saw what time she left the office and her lover's apartment on Matt's birthday. "Damn that skunk," Marcy said. I told them, "The most important thing is that I love you both. This is a problem between your mother and me, and we will do everything we can to remain a family." After half an hour of crying, hugging, and talking, Audrey walked in. Seeing our expressions, she looked worried. "What happened?" she asked. "Children, go to your rooms while Mom and I talk," I said. They hugged me, gave Audrey a hostile look, and went to their rooms. When the doors closed, I asked Audrey to sit. "What's happening?" she asked, trying to stay calm. "Audrey, I know you're having an affair." "Oh God, no. That's not true. I would never cheat on you. Why would you say that?" she said, tearing up. "If you won't tell me the truth, this conversation is over," I said firmly. "This must be a mistake. Someone thought they saw something that wasn't true," she replied, trying to sound convincing. "Okay, we're done for today. Think about what you're doing to this family. We'll discuss this tomorrow. Until then, don't talk to me or the kids," I said, heading to the guest room. Audrey followed me, insisting, "You are wrong. I would never do that." I closed the door in her face and she fell silent. I heard her talking quietly through Marcy's door, pleading, "Marcy, what did Daddy tell you? It's all a mistake. Please open the door so we can talk." Marcy texted me and Matt, "Can you make her go away?" "I'll try, but she just denied the affair, so there's no point if she's lying," I replied. "Perhaps you're mistaken," Marcy wrote back. "I have pictures of them unclothed together," I replied. "Oh," was all Marcy texted. I opened the door, and Audrey looked at me, her eyes pleading. "Please leave the children alone until we resolve this. You're making it harder for them," I said. "But I want to know what you told them," Audrey insisted. "I told them the truth. You have another man. This is between us until we sort it out. Leave the kids alone," I said. Audrey went to her bedroom, crying all night. The next day, I was at the kitchen table waiting for Audrey when she came home. The children were with friends. "Audrey, please sit down." Audrey sat. "Have you thought about what you're doing to your family?" I asked. She nodded. "Are you ready to talk honestly about your affair?" I asked. She nodded again. "So what do you have to say? It's all a misunderstanding?" I asked. "Yes, I had an emotional connection. We had lunch several times, but that's all. I love only you," Audrey said. "If you lie, this conversation is over. We'll talk Saturday at 9. The children will stay with my parents. Think about what you're doing to this family," I said, leaving for the guest room. On Saturday morning, I had breakfast with the kids at Audrey's parents' house. When I returned, Audrey was at the kitchen table. "Are you ready to talk honestly?" I asked. She nodded. "Did you tell my parents?" I asked. "Yes." "Have you told your parents, your brother and his wife?" I asked. "Yes. How could you do this to me?" Audrey asked, her voice quivering. "You lied to me, the children, and our parents. You kissed him a couple of times? That's all? Now you've turned our parents and children against me," Audrey said. "Since you still refuse to be honest, this conversation is over. The children will stay with their grandparents. I'll live in the guest room and work from home. We'll talk on Tuesday after work. Think about what you're doing to this family," I said, leaving the house. That night, I returned from dinner with my parents and children. Audrey was in the living room. "We'll talk on Tuesday," I said, and went to bed. Audrey's friends texted asking me to forgive her, calling it an innocent mistake. I made a video call and showed them evidence of the affair. They quickly apologized and hung up. I don't think Audrey heard from them again. On Tuesday evening, Audrey came home exhausted. She brought pasta from our favorite Italian restaurant and prepared a plate for me. The days when you wonder what lies to tell your friends and family so they don't find out what a terrible person you are takes their toll, I said. Nobody talks to me. They think I'm a monster, Audrey said. Lies have consequences. You showed everyone there's a monster inside you, I replied. They said you showed them photos and videos of me with my lover, Audrey said. Yes, I showed them. No one will show me this photo. Can I see it? Audrey asked. Yes, if it helps. I didn't let other copies get out. I don't want our family ridiculed, I said. Audrey looked at the photo and video. I love you so much. Can't we forget this mistake? She asked. How strong was your love for me that you had to be with someone else? I asked. I never loved him. Marriage is about shared responsibilities, trust, and fun. I was 100% responsible, trusted, and had fun with you. But you left most of the financial and family responsibilities and all the trust on me while you partied, I said. You stole my love by giving yours to someone else. How long have you known? Audrey asked quietly. 7 months, I replied. Why did you wait so long? She asked. I hoped it was a one-time mistake and you'd admit it, because you always say you love me, I said. I'm sorry, Audrey said. How can I trust you now? I asked. Because I love you and I'm telling the truth, she replied. Is this the same truth you told me in our last 3 talks where you denied the affair? I asked. After a few minutes of silence, I asked, Audrey, what can I do to make things better? I placed an envelope on the desk in front of her. This is a post-nuptial agreement. Sign it and I'll consider taking you back. We'll need therapy for us and the kids to make it work. I don't want to sign a post-nuptial agreement, Audrey replied. Then we're done. It seems you just want to come out of this marriage better off financially, I said. What will I get if I sign it? Audrey asked. If one of us files for divorce, I get 70% of everything. If I cheat, it's 50. 50. If you cheat, I get 85%. In all scenarios, I get full custody. Have a lawyer look at it and sign it. I need to know you're willing to sacrifice financially. How much time do I have? She asked. Until Saturday morning, I said, standing up. Aren't you going to eat? I ordered your favorite food, Audrey said. After everything you've done and all the lies, should I expect the arsenic sauce to be fresh? I asked. She started crying. Later, Audrey signed the agreement to regain some trust. The next day, I went to Audrey's office. While she was out, I met with the office manager, an elderly lady whose husband owned the company. How can I help you today? She asked angrily. I think there's a misunderstanding about me being the bad guy with my wife, I said. This seems personal. Please leave or I'll call the police, she said. It's about my wife and a coworker she's having lovemaking with, I said. Do you have any evidence? She asked. Yes, here's a photo and voice recordings of them admitting they had lovemaking instead of showing properties, I said, playing short clips. She was unhappy. Can I assume my wife will be fired immediately? I asked. Yes, along with her lover, she replied. You can't fire her lover. I had permission to record my wife, not him. This can't be shown in court, and I don't want to be accused of libel. I doubt you do either, I said. Thanks for the info, she said, relieved. Can I leave a photo? I asked. No, I don't want this passed around, she replied. Audrey came home that evening in tears. She lost her job and received no references. She wanted to talk, but I only said Saturday and went to my room. On Saturday morning, Audrey was at the kitchen table. You should have quit immediately to avoid contact with your lover. Since your moral compass is broken, we should have discussed this first, I said. Sorry, we no longer discuss decisions that negatively impact our marriage or children. By the way, have you signed the post-nuptial agreement? I asked. Yes, she said, handing me the envelope. I checked it, sent an electronic copy to my lawyer, and put the physical copy in a safe. Then I announced the new house rules. Good behavior from you, and we'll start counseling. I'll tell the family we're trying to fix our marriage. I knew it wouldn't last. I didn't even schedule counseling. Audrey was the perfect housewife, but she installed a hidden camera in my office. I watched her do it on my laptop in my car. On Saturday morning, I came to the kitchen where Audrey was drinking coffee, looking smug. We exchanged pleasantries. I took my coffee and sat opposite her. Where are the children? I asked. I took them to my parents, she replied. Why? I asked. We haven't had lovemaking in a month, and I hope to change your mind this morning, she said. Actually, it's been 8 months, I replied. 8 months? That can't be right, Audrey insisted. It is. Maybe you've lost track because of your cheating, but I'm sure, I said. Well, we could change that, she said, smiling and starting to get up. Audrey, I can't forget what you did or erase those images. It won't happen, I said, motioning for her to sit down. Fine, be stubborn. I did everything you asked, and you still treat me like a leper. I want more respect, Audrey said. Is this how you want to handle it? I asked. Yes. I deleted all your copies of the videos. I even deleted the ones in the cloud and destroyed the flash drive. I'm tired of being an outcast. I'll stay with my sister until you treat me with respect. I'll pick up the kids from school every day, and we'll have dinner at my new place without you, she said, walking to the front door. Her sister came out of the dining room, and they left together. For 2 months, Audrey worked on her parents and children, claiming I never had any records, and photos were photoshopped. She asked me to show proof, but she had deleted everything. The children were confused, and her parents wanted to believe her. Even my parents had doubts. My brother and his wife supported me completely. I felt isolated. I met her lover to arrange another video. This time I went all out. A hotel room on the beach in Florida, 2 first-class tickets, and $5,000 for the video. I insisted it be recorded on the balcony. The lover asked for more money for an expensive restaurant. Audrey and Karen were excited, so I bought another first-class ticket for Karen. 2 weeks later, I watched the new video with the lover in my car. Everything was as I asked. I encrypted the video, uploaded it to the cloud, and encrypted the flash drive. The lover asked for his money, but I had questions. Did you approach my wife first? I asked. Not really. It just happened, he replied. Who mentioned the lovemaking first? I asked. She did, he replied. As we drove back, I asked, how many women have you seduced in town? 7, he replied, listing them. All were married. I turned off the recorder in my pocket. Want to see something crazy? I asked, accelerating to 70 miles per hour. Hey man, what are you doing? He said. Sorry, this is the crazy part, I said, steering into the trees and braking sharply. We hit a tree at less than 40 miles per hour. Both of us were hurt, but alive. I called the police to report the accident. They confiscated my laptop and flash drive as evidence. After being examined at the hospital, I went home and was sick for a week. Audrey found out about my accident when she learned of her lover's end of life. She called, trying to get information, but I acted clueless. The next day, the police questioned me about the connection between the deceased and my wife. I admitted knowing about the affair and explained that I gave him money to stay away from her, but he demanded more, leading to the accident. So you think I deliberately crashed the car to eliminate him? I asked. The police left soon after. I had the opportunity and motive, but who risked their life to eliminate someone by crashing a car into a tree? A few days later, Audrey called, wanting to discuss our marriage on neutral ground, with her sister present for safety. The house is out. I don't want this conversation recorded. Let's meet at a hotel, Audrey said. I agreed, but insisted on choosing the room number. She argued about safety, but I didn't want the conversation recorded either. We agreed to meet at a hotel. On Saturday, I followed Audrey and Karen to a hotel. The receptionist offered us room 216, but I requested a higher room overlooking the front. Audrey and Karen were clearly disappointed. They'd probably have to pay again to retrieve their recording equipment from room 216. In the elevator, Karen flirted with me, pressing against my side. I told her the discussion was between me and Audrey. Karen, who usually stayed away from me on Audrey's insistence, seemed different now. The hotel room was standard with an office desk, chair, chest of drawers, and a queen-size bed. What now? Audrey asked. Take off your clothes, completely unclothed. I don't trust you, and you don't trust me, I said. Audrey looked at Karen. That's my sister. I don't want you to see her unclothed. Come on, she doesn't have anything most people in this town haven't seen, I said. Karen stuck her tongue out at me, revealing a piercing. Okay, Audrey agreed too easily. Get completely unclothed. It worked. I knew her goal. I came prepared. Audrey and Karen began undressing. I quickly undressed and folded my clothes on the desk, placing a pen behind them. The pen matched the hotel pen exactly, but had a hidden camera. When Audrey suggested the hotel, I visited every hotel and motel to get a free pen. I hollowed out a pen to fit the camera, making it heavier than a normal pen. I placed my clothes in the bathroom, keeping an eye on Audrey and Karen undressing. Then I walked back unclothed to the table and sat down. Audrey and Karen were on the bed, their clothes beside them. "Now that we're all here, let's get started," I said, trying to ignore Karen's attractive body. "Audrey, I want a serious conversation. In a few minutes, we'll know what this is really about." Audrey said sweetly, "I love you, darling." I replied, "Yes, like your favorite pair of shoes." "You know that's not true. I really love you," Audrey insisted. "Sure, as long as your credit card works," I retorted. Audrey's voice rose. "Don't be so sullen. Our marriage is strong enough to handle this." "Strong? You used all our strength to repeatedly stab me in the back and now want me to turn my back on you again?" I shot back. "Don't be so melodramatic. It was a mistake," Audrey said defensively. "A mistake that will end in divorce," I declared. "Darling, don't be like that. It was just a little mistake," Audrey pleaded. "It wasn't small. It was a calculated betrayal," I countered. In a falsetto, I mimicked, "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know it would hurt you." "Honey, I'm sorry I lied. I was ashamed. I stopped lying when you confronted me," Audrey apologized. "Oh, you mean when you first denied it? Or when you called it an emotional connection? Or the third time when you admitted to just kissing him? You only stopped lying when you saw the photos. But that won't stop you from lying about other things, will it?" I challenged. Karen, noticing Audrey's reaction, said, "We don't want anyone to say something they'll regret." "Going too far? Are you kidding? How many boyfriends and husbands have you deceived, Karen? How many married men have you seduced?" I accused. Audrey quietly said, "I'm so sorry for what I did. Feeling guilty isn't enough. My job is to help you feel it properly," I stated coldly. Audrey pitifully said, "It's not that bad. What's the difference between you and a con artist? You gained my trust to deceive me," I said. "I didn't deceive you. Marriage is a contract of fidelity and trust. You broke it," Audrey argued. "I kept my end. It was you who betrayed me," I countered. "You forced me to sign that postnuptial agreement." "That was unfair," Audrey complained. "Unfair? If I get a traffic ticket, I pay the fine. If I cheat on taxes, they take my money. If I drink too much, I go to jail. Cheaters should face consequences. Marriage is about raising a family and being faithful. Otherwise, what's the point?" I explained. Audrey was speechless. "Do you know how many marriages that start with infidelity last more than a few years? 5%? Was it your plan to divorce me and marry your lover? We'll never know, right?" "He's dead," I said, striking a nerve. Audrey's face twisted with anger. "I deleted all your evidence. You can't control me anymore. Our parents and children don't know who to believe. Was it worth it?" She spat. "I didn't destroy this marriage. You did. I'm just stating the time of end of life," I responded. Audrey angrily said, "Maybe I wouldn't have slept with someone else if you paid more attention to me." "Why should I? You didn't pay any attention to me," I replied. We sat in silence for a moment, calming down. "Did you eliminate him?" Audrey asked suddenly. I smiled at the camera hidden in the pen and said, "It was an accident." "How could you do such a thing?" Audrey tried to provoke an emotional response, but I stayed silent. Audrey's eyes filled with tears. "He was a good guy." Allowing some anger to seep into my voice, I said, "Oh, you mean those guys who seduce other people's wives?" Audrey, in tears, said, "But you still love me, I know that." Correction, I loved you. True love is a privilege most people never experience, even in marriage. You had that from me, but all I got was your desire for a husband, money, and fidelity. You threw away real love for vulgar passion. Millions will desire you for passion, but no one will love you like I did after what you did to your family and me, I said with finality. Tears streamed down Audrey's face. She quickly recovered and continued her plan, saying, "I need a drink. Anyone else? I'll go to the bar and be back to talk like adults." Audrey got dressed and left. As soon as the door closed, Karen said, "You look delicious." "Karen, now is not the time." Karen stood between my legs. "Karen, your sister will be back soon. What she doesn't know won't hurt her." I was trying to stop Karen when she suddenly pulled me onto the bed, screaming, "Please stop!" Audrey burst in, phone in hand. "What are you doing to my sister?" Karen cried. "He attacked me. Make him stop." Audrey pushed me, smiling, and dropped the phone. She picked it up, pressed the end button, and likely sent the video to the cloud. "Now you're in trouble. I have a video of you attacking her." They both laughed. I sat back in my chair looking dejected. Audrey, wagging her finger, said, "Here's how the divorce will work. No more postnuptial agreement. If you mention it, I'll send you to jail." You get 10%, I get 90%, full custody and support for life. If you don't agree, this video will send you to jail. Yes, I replied, realizing I had underestimated Audrey. This was her main plan. Karen got dressed quickly. Come on, Audrey. 10 minutes ago, Audrey was crying over lost love. Now she was leaving with her sister, both laughing at me. I watched from the window until they left. Then I got dressed, took my pen, and left the hotel. The meeting went better than expected. The next day, Audrey was served with divorce papers, enforcing the post-nuptial agreement. When she threatened me with her recording, I said, "You didn't delete everything. If you blame me, I'll be free the next day and you'll be in jail." Audrey was smart enough to wait. We both hired lawyers. I demanded the post-nuptial agreement be honored. I provided transcripts of all my recordings. My lawyer told hers we were restoring deleted records and only had transcripts for now. After much negotiation, we set a court date. The question was whether the post-nuptial agreement was applicable and if I had actual records. A few days before the trial, I sent forged letters to Audrey and Karen from the CDC, stating her lover had AIDS and they should get tested immediately. They were told not to have lovemaking for 12 months until it was confirmed they were clear. On the trial day, the judge was displeased with both of us. Audrey claimed the post-nuptial agreement was signed under duress and she never committed infidelity. She cried convincingly. I argued the post-nuptial agreement was created because she was an adulteress, signed under divorce pressure. She violated the marriage agreement and was an unfit mother, making the agreement fair. "Judge, what evidence do you have that she committed infidelity?" my lawyer asked, presenting video and voice recordings to support the transcripts. The judge inquired, "Why are you producing these now?" We obtained the recordings after a long process. Audrey deleted the original transcripts. Recovering data using a certified process is time-consuming. "We just got the evidence here," my lawyer explained. The judge directed the next question to me. "Did Audrey delete the posts?" "Yes, Your Honor. We have a recording of her confessing. I convinced Audrey I had strict control over the videos. She thought she deleted everything, but I saved them in multiple places. Judges don't like evidence tampering. Audrey lied about never cheating and said I had no proof," I answered. "I understand," the judge acknowledged. The judge then turned to Audrey's lawyer. "Do the transcripts match the recordings?" "Yes, Your Honor," Audrey's lawyer confirmed. "Do you challenge the recording's authenticity?" the judge asked. Audrey's lawyer looked at her and she shook her head slightly. "No, Your Honor," he responded. "This answers the validity question and nullifies compulsion claims. But none of this proves infidelity after signing the contract," the judge noted. My lawyer intervened. "Yes, Your Honor. Here is the transcript of the final video and the video itself, proving Audrey's infidelity after signing the agreement." The judge asked, "Why now?" "This evidence was in police custody as part of an accidental end-of-life investigation. We weren't sure it still existed," my lawyer clarified. Turning to Audrey's lawyer again, the judge asked, "Have you seen the video?" "Yes, but we believe it's inappropriate because there's no consent form, and if allowed, there's no evidence it wasn't recorded before the agreement," Audrey's lawyer argued. "My client paid for the plane tickets for Audrey, Karen, and her lover, and the hotel room they used," my lawyer stated. The judge asked me directly, "Did you consent to your wife's affair?" "No, I never agreed or condoned her activities," I replied. "Then why pay for their tickets and hotel?" the judge pressed. "I asked her lover how much he needed to stop dating my wife. He said $2,000, tickets to Jamaica, and a 3-night stay at a 5-star hotel. We agreed, and I bought ticket vouchers. He used the air show and hotel vouchers in Florida the following week while my wife was at a conference," I explained. "How do we know this is the right hotel?" the judge queried. "In the first photo, you can see the hotel sign in the background," I pointed out. "How did you get this video?" the judge continued. "I paid for it. When I found out about my wife's affairs, I asked him for proof. He provided visual evidence," I answered. "Why collect this evidence?" the judge asked. "For divorce," I replied. "Did he know why you were collecting this information?" the judge asked again. "Yes. Several months ago, I explained it was easier and cheaper to get testimony from him rather than a private investigator. I paid him $500 for another video," I clarified. Audrey broke the post-nuptial agreement. "If you need someone to testify about the video's authenticity and date, my wife's sister is right there," I said, pointing at Karen. Everyone turned to look at her, and the judge reprimanded me for using obscene language. I apologized immediately. The judge asked, "Is that all you got from your wife's lover that night?" Looking at Audrey, I said yes, but he provided most of the records you have today. He's been doing this for months, including hotel and airfare. I paid him about $3,000. Audrey looked furious. My testimony made her realize her lover had been recording their encounters to sell to me for the divorce. For a mere $3,000, Audrey would have paid 10 times more to keep the video hidden. Though angry, I could see Audrey calculating. She believed this was all he had. If he had more, he would have produced it already. When I finished, I saw Audrey make a hasty decision. Audrey whispered to her lawyer, who then requested a break as we neared lunch. The judge allowed it. When we returned, Audrey's lawyer claimed they had a video showing me committing a crime and infidelity, which violated the postnup. Both Audrey and Karen were willing to attest to its authenticity. Audrey confirmed, "My sister and I didn't want to put the father of my children in jail, but now I see how manipulative he is." The video showed the hotel door, someone screaming, "Please stop," and Audrey bursting in, showing me on top of Karen. Audrey screamed, "What are you doing to my sister?" And Karen cried, "He attacked me." Audrey then grabbed her sister, her phone fell, and the video ended. "What happened next?" the judge asked. "I locked myself in the bathroom and told my husband if he didn't leave in 2 minutes, I'd call the police. I also told him I uploaded the video to the cloud," Audrey replied. "Yes," the judge said. "I was in trouble." I saw Audrey's parents looking at me suspiciously. The judge turned to me. "What do you say in your defense?" My lawyer responded, "We have a video to refute it. Let's see it." Audrey's lawyer tried to discredit the video. "Judge, you can present your surprise video, but we can't see their rebuttal video?" The judge grinned, and Audrey's lawyer sat down. Audrey looked pale. The video started with us discussing stripping to avoid recording devices, and ended with Audrey and Karen leaving the room laughing. The judge looked at me with a sad understanding, hinting he too had suffered infidelity. Audrey whispered to her lawyer, who shook his head, "No." My lawyer confirmed that none of my statements in the video were self-incriminating. Audrey's lawyer acknowledged this on video, which must have frustrated Audrey. Her initial goal was to sweetly convince me to forgive her. Her secondary goal was to trick me into incriminating myself about her lover's end of life. The fake attack on Karen was backfiring. Karen tried to sneak away, but when the video showed her pulling me onto the bed, the bailiff sat her back down. Audrey was truly ashamed. Her parents sighed behind her. Relatives left the court before the video ended. Audrey knew she'd lost their support. The judge ruled in favor of the postnup. My lawyer then revealed Audrey's secret bank account, which had more than our combined assets. She had been depositing extra paychecks and bonuses into it for years, and had taken out a second mortgage on our house. I asked my lawyer not to tell the judge or Audrey about this. My lawyer presented my bank account balance to the judge, showing that Audrey had transferred our mortgage funds to her secret account, suggesting she planned to run. This mistake led to the discovery of Audrey's secret account. The second mortgage transfer was actually done by me using Audrey's login. I discovered her account the day I installed the monitoring program. Hidden funds not disclosed during divorce proceedings are subject to specific laws. The judge awarded me 100% of the asset and required Audrey to pay all attorney's fees and court costs. Due to her greed, she transferred all our property to her secret account, so I didn't have to pay her half the house value. The judge also sentenced Audrey and Karen to 90 days in jail for perjury. I received 95% of the property, full custody of the children, the house, 2 of our 3 best cars, and several years of alimony. Audrey got only 5%, which didn't even cover her legal fees. She kept her clothes, car, and jewelry, but I had already sold her expensive jewelry after discovering her affair. She never noticed because I stopped taking her out. I used the jewelry money and accident insurance to buy my dream car. Audrey struggled to stay close to the children and had to commute an hour for work. They never forgave her and were ashamed to be seen with her. Both she and Karen ended up working as bar waitresses. I also sent the lover's last words to 6 husbands of 7 wives. Drunken messages from Audrey occasionally appear on my phone. Sometimes she wishes I was dead and blames me for her ruined life, while other times she cries, begs for forgiveness, and hopes we can be together again. I save every message and video in case she tries to return to our children's lives. Audrey never truly loved me as I loved her. She measured life by what she could take, not give. I have a restraining order against her and her sister, as they may still harbor animosity toward me.